Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Tracie Hawlett and J.B. Beasley. J.B. Beasley was born on July 31, 1981, in Troy, Alabama, to Cheryl and Hilton Lanier J.B. After her parents divorced in 1984, J.B. moved to Dothan with her mother. Her mother later married Joey Begun, who became J.B.'s loving stepfather, and she and her 4 sisters grew up in a house in Dothan. She was an outgoing girl who enjoyed a variety of activities, including cheerleading, dance lessons, playing the piano, and swimming. J.B. and her sisters also modeled for several companies. During high school, she met Tracie Hawlett, with whom she quickly formed a close friendship. Tracie was born on March 3, 1982, to Carolyn and Robert Hawlett, a police officer with the Dothan Police Department. Her life took a dramatic turn when her father died when Tracie was 5 years old. Her mother then married Mike Roberts, who raised Tracie with her mother. Unlike her friend J.B., Tracie was shy but always put others before herself. As the eldest in the family, she took her responsibilities very seriously, especially when it came to her 2 younger brothers. Tracie attended Northview High School, excelling in her studies and participating in extracurricular activities as a cheerleader, often with J.B. As the 2 girls began to enter adulthood, they had no idea of the tragic fate that awaited them. On July 31, 1999, J.B. and Tracie set off from Dothan in J.B.'s 1993 Mazda 929 to attend a birthday party in Headland, a town just a few miles north. However, unfamiliar with the roads, the 2 young women soon found themselves in trouble. Just minutes after starting their journey from home, they became lost. At approximately 10:30 p.m., J.B. and Tracie stopped at a BP gas station in Headland to ask for directions. The gas station was located near the intersection of routes 173 and 431. Using the pay phone at the gas station, they called their friends to get a better idea of how to get to the party. However, after driving on, J.B. and Tracie found themselves in Ozark, Alabama, about 24 miles northwest of Headland, instead of their intended destination. Still confused about the directions, the girls stopped at the Big Little store at 11:30 p.m. Although the store was closed, they used the pay phone to make another call. This time, Tracie called her mother to tell them they were lost, in Ozark, and planning to return home. A woman, Marilyn Merritt, and her daughters then stopped at a gas station to buy a soda. Tracie and J.B. approached them and asked for directions to Dothan. Marilyn explained the route as best she could, and the girls seemed to understand. She found the girls polite and well-mannered and noted that their car was clean. Marilyn recalled that the girls left the parking lot and turned right, as she had instructed. However, at that time, J.B. and Tracie had not returned home. The next morning, August 1, 1999, around 8 a.m., Tracie's mother contacted the police to report her daughter missing. Police soon discovered their first clue regarding the girls' disappearance. After Tracie was reported missing, police found J.B.'s car on Herring Avenue in Ozark. What was unusual about the discovery was that the car's gas tank, which had been full the day before, was now nearly empty. The car showed signs of having been driven in muddy conditions, but the doors had been locked, although the driver's side window was partially rolled down. There was no evidence of forced entry. Inside, police found J.B.'s driver's license on the dashboard, as well as the girls' wallets, which still contained cash. However, the car keys were missing, and neither Tracie nor J.B. were found. A fingerprint on the locked trunk lid led police to believe something was seriously wrong. As they surveyed the scene, they suspected the trunk might contain vital clues but were hampered by the lack of a key. However, after 6 hours of investigation, they found an interior latch that allowed them to open the trunk without a key. When police opened the trunk, they made a horrifying discovery: the bodies of 2 girls inside. Both victims were fully clothed, but their pants were soiled from the waist down. Each had been shot once in the head. An autopsy revealed that Tracie had been shot in the temple, while JB had been shot in the right cheek. Tracie's body also showed a 9mm shell casing in her leg, scratches on her arm, and spikes stuck in her jeans. JB's clothes, especially her new shoes, were muddy and dirty. Police discovered that the two girls had likely been shot inside the trunk, although initial signs suggested an execution-style killing. After notifying their families of the discovery, an official murder investigation was launched. Police found the girls' wallets, jewelry, money, and credit cards still in the car, indicating that this was not a robbery. Autopsies revealed no alcohol or drugs in the victims' systems. Additionally, the autopsies confirmed that neither girl had been sexually assaulted before her death, ruling out a sexual motive. 2 months after Tracie and JB's murders, the State Crime Lab released a report revealing the presence of unidentified semen on JB's clothing and skin. Despite this new evidence, the fingerprints found on the trunk lid remained a mystery, as there was no match in the database. With no clear leads, the investigation stalled. As news of the girls' deaths spread rapidly, police still had few leads to identify a suspect. A reward was also offered to try to gather information related to the murders, but no new leads were discovered. However, police soon received an unexpected breakthrough in the case. A month after the discovery of JB and Tracie's bodies, Johnny William Barentine, 28, a longtime resident of Ozark, came forward to the local police department on September 1st. Johnny claimed to have witnessed the girls' murders. He testified that on the night of the murders, he had gone out to buy milk for his 2-year-old son around the time Tracie called from the Big Little Store pay phone. At 1 a.m., Johnny returned home visibly upset and initially told his wife that he had been hit by a black truck near Herring Road. However, during a 4-hour interview with Ozark police, Johnny gave 6 different accounts of what he knew. He initially told Ozark Police Chief Tony R. Spivey that he saw a black truck speeding away from the area where the girls' bodies were discovered. Unfortunately, his story continued to change and contradict throughout the interviews. Johnny initially claimed that he picked up a tattooed stranger and drove to the Big Little Store. He later said that the stranger got into a car with 2 girls, whom he recognized as the 2 girls who were later found dead. Johnny said that the group drove to Herring Avenue, where the stranger forced the girls out of the car, leading to a struggle as the girls tried to escape. According to Johnny's statement, after witnessing a confrontation, he saw something in the stranger's hand just before hearing 2 gunshots. Johnny then drove the stranger away from the scene before returning home. However, in a conflicting version of events, Johnny admitted to police that he actually knew the stranger he picked up, identifying him as a neighbor who lived nearby. Notably, Johnny's home was less than a mile from where police discovered the victims' bodies. Johnny's story was not convincing to police, and he became the prime suspect in the murders of JB and Tracie. As a result, Ozark police quickly arrested him and charged him with 2 counts of attempted murder. However, several issues with his testimony raised suspicions. Notably, Johnny did not mention any sexual activity that would explain the presence of semen on JB's clothes and body. Additionally, the neighbor he accused had a solid alibi for the time. Johnny initially confessed to making up the entire story to collect the reward money. Despite his admission, the police believed they had the right suspect. At a preliminary hearing on September 21st, Alabama Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Charles Huggins testified that Johnny accurately described the victim's clothing and other relevant details, indicating that he was indeed present at the crime scene. Then, at a bail hearing on October 18th, Johnny gave another testimony. He proclaimed his innocence, saying that he never picked up a man with a tattoo or witnessed anything on the night of the murder. According to Johnny, he went to the store around 11 p.m. to buy milk for his son and then made up the story to get a reward. The judge denied him bail and he was sent back to the Dale County Jail in Ozark. Throughout this time, Johnny's family members remained supportive of him. They gave interviews to the media, expressing their belief in his innocence and stating that he was incapable of harming anyone. Johnny's attorney, Bill Kimmons, argued that his client had no involvement in the murders of Tracie and J.B., emphasizing that the 4-hour interrogation had affected Johnny, who was trapped in his own false confession. Johnny's defense also pointed out that he had only completed 7th grade and part of 8th grade. He said his client was in special education, suggesting he was incapable of planning the heinous crime. After further investigation, it was discovered that Johnny's DNA did not match the semen found on the victim's body and clothing. As a result, he was released from prison on December 17, 1999. In January 2000, a Dale County grand jury chose not to indict Johnny, officially clearing him of any suspects in the murders of Tracie and J.B. This development led to a setback in the investigation, with criticism directed at the police methods used and doubts raised about the Ozark Police's ability to handle the case. However, police continued to focus on other potential suspects. During the investigation, a man from Michigan was identified as the prime suspect. He had attended a party the night of the murders near the area and JB's car was later found. The man had left town shortly after the murders, raising suspicion. Police interviewed him 3 times in Michigan but were unable to provide a clear explanation for the 3 to 4-hour gap in his alibi for the night of the murder. However, these statements were never made public by police. The case against him was eventually dropped after DNA evidence proved his innocence. Another key lead police are investigating is the driver of a small white pickup truck that was spotted at the Big Little store. Security footage captured the truck at the gas station when JB and Tracie stopped to call Tracie's mother from a payphone. The video quality was poor and did not show the driver or anyone getting in or out of the truck. It was impossible to follow a digital trail, as there was no record of gas being purchased at the gas station at the time. After releasing photos of the truck to the media, police asked the public for information, but as leads went cold, the driver and truck were never found. The last potential lead was a Mississippi man who had been extradited to Ozark from Jones County on an unrelated charge of possession of drug paraphernalia. The man had stayed with relatives in Ozark for a short time before leaving town 2 days after the murder, prompting police to question him. However, the questioning yielded no significant information and, without evidence, they were forced to release him. A woman contacted police in March 2000, reporting that she had heard screaming and 2 gunshots on the night of July 31, 1999, near Highway 123 South, just inside the city limits. When asked about her delayed report, she explained that she feared being implicated. Police searched the area thoroughly based on her description and found a 9mm bullet, the same caliber used in the murders of Tracie and J.B. However, the make of the bullet did not match the brand of the shell casing found on Tracie's body. Furthermore, the bullet had no markings that could be used to forensically compare it to other evidence in the case. Unfortunately, this lead ended up being another dead end for the police. Several leads in the J.B. and Tracie case eventually ran into dead ends, but police were determined to find a DNA match. As J.B. and Tracie's grieving families tried to move on with their lives, the case went cold. Years later, however, a dramatic development reignited the investigation. A major breakthrough came in 2015 when Rena, an auxiliary Ozark police officer, came forward and publicly accused an Ozark police officer of killing J.B. and Tracie and others of covering up the incident. Rena made several serious allegations related to a 1999 incident in Ozark. According to her, a police officer stopped a man named J.B. on the night of July 31, 1999, looking for cassette tapes containing recordings of conversations. These tapes allegedly implicated Ozark police officers in a cocaine distribution and profiteering scheme. Rena asserted that the search for the tapes ultimately led to the murders of the two innocent girls. Rena further alleged that several law enforcement officers knew the identity of the killer but chose to cover it up by destroying evidence. They also allegedly threatened her to keep her from speaking out. She specifically named 3 police officers, Gary Butch Whittington, Rex Tipton, and Eddie Henderson, as harassing and threatening her. Rena further accused then-police Chief Tony Spivey, who led the initial investigation, of being involved in the cover-up. However, she did not reveal the identity of the specific police officer she believed was responsible for the murders. Noted American journalist and newspaper editor John B. Carroll wrote an article discussing the case. John B. believes that the officer involved thought that Tracie and JB would use the tapes as evidence in a trial scheduled for August 2, 1999, just 48 hours after they were killed. However, John B. also claims that Rena was severely beaten with a baseball bat after speaking out, which prevented her from naming the real killer. The officers Rena accused all denied any involvement in the murders of JB and Tracie. Without any physical evidence, none of them were ever officially named as suspects in the case. Regardless, the allegations exploded on numerous true crime websites and social media, leading to a defamation lawsuit. On January 29, 2016, Keith Coffin, Rex Tipton, Tony Spivey, Eddie Henderson, and Gary Butch Whittington, all Ozark, Alabama police officers, filed a defamation of character lawsuit against Rena Crum, John B. Carroll, and Dean Matthews. That case was dismissed in 2018. In May 2016, Rena Crum was convicted of molesting JB's sister and was given a suspended sentence and a $250 fine. Over the years, police investigated multiple theories, interviewed hundreds of people, and took DNA samples from several suspects, but to no avail. It took 20 years and the advancement of new DNA technology before police were able to make an arrest. In March 2019, police sent DNA found on JB's body in clothing to Virginia-based Parabon Nano Laboratories, which specializes in DNA. Using a public genealogical database to analyze the suspect's DNA and match it to genetic information led police to a breakthrough in the case. The new evidence linked DNA found at the crime scene to a suspect named Coley McCraney, a man in his 40s. At the time, Coley was not a suspect in the 1999 murders of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett, but the discovery changed everything. Coley, an Alabama native, had led a relatively normal life before his DNA linked him to the crimes. Born in Alabama, Coley attended and graduated from Carroll High School in Ozark in 1992, where he was an accomplished athlete and served as president of the school's library club. After completing high school, he enlisted in the United States Air Force and served from 1993 to 1997. Coley's personal life involved several marriages. He married his first wife in 1992 but separated 2 years later and eventually divorced. During this time, his ex-wife accused him of assault and filed a complaint with the Air Force. After the divorce, Coley remarried in 2001 and started a family with his second wife. With the exception of a child support issue in 1998, Coley has no prior criminal record or criminal history. Coley spent 20 years as a truck driver for various companies in Alabama. In addition to his trucking career, he recently co-founded a church and served as a bishop. At the time of the murders, Coley was 26 years old and lived on Lisenby Drive in Ozark, about a mile from where J.B. and Tracie's bodies were discovered in 1999. 20 years after the murders, Coley was arrested on March 19, 2019, following a traffic stop in Daleville, Alabama. During an interview with police, Coley claimed that he did not know J.B. and Tracie. Police did not provide any information about his possible motive. Coley's arrest took the Ozark community by surprise, especially Police Chief Marlon Walker, who attended school with him. Rena Crum, 53, who previously accused the Ozark Police Department of covering up the killings, withdrew her charges at a hearing in August 2022. Coley McCraney, 49, is facing 5 counts of attempted murder for the shooting deaths of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett and is being held without bail in the Dale County Jail ahead of his trial, which is scheduled for April 17, 2023. At trial, Coley admitted that he knew J.B. He had a conversation with J.B. several weeks before the killings in which she introduced herself as Jennifer at the Wiregrass Commons Mall. He testified that on the day of the killings, he and J.B. had consensual sex in his truck. He said he never knew that Jennifer was J.B. Beasley. On April 26, 2023, a jury found Coley McCraney guilty on all charges and sentenced him to life in prison without parole. In July 2023, a Dale County District Court judge denied Coley's request for a new trial. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Hannah Clark. Hannah Clark was born on September 8, 1988. By 2020, she was a devoted mother of 3 young children, 2 sweet girls, Aaliyah and Liana, and a rambunctious boy named Trey. Hannah's loved ones remember her as a kind and gentle soul with a bright smile that could light up anyone's heart. She was a selfless and caring mother who gave her all to her children. Hannah's family life was marked by her relationship with her ex-husband, Rowan Baxter, a rugby player for the New Zealand Warriors team. Despite their significant age difference, they formed a strong bond, which deepened over time. Sue Clark, Hannah's mother, struggled to accept Rowan, but Hannah refused to listen to her concerns. People close to Rowan shared negative opinions about him. Sue, Hannah's mother, had a nagging feeling that something was off about Rowan. She perceived him as arrogant and self-centered, which made her uneasy. She was also concerned about the significant age gap between Rowan and Hannah. When they first met, Hannah was a recent graduate, while Rowan was 31 years old. Additionally, Rowan's past relationships were a worry for Sue, particularly since he was still in the process of divorcing his previous wife and was living with her at the time. When Hannah introduced Rowan to her parents, they questioned him about his ex-wife. Rowan explained that he was staying with her due to their son. Eventually, Rowan finalized his divorce and continued his relationship with Hannah. In 2011, he proposed to her, and she accepted. They got married in Kingsley, New South Wales, Australia. The following year, they had 3 children together. Hannah and her family, including her father Rowan, were passionate about sports. However, Rowan's muscular physique, developed during his professional athlete days, was partly due to steroid use, which led to mental health issues. As a personal trainer, Hannah's approach differed from her father's. She was loved by her clients for her kindness, empathy, and dedication, earning her a loyal following. Rowan's approach to training was unique, but his behavior was marred by aggression and inappropriateness, likely caused by steroid use. This made him a poor trainer, as clients don't need someone who makes them feel uncomfortable. Rowan struggled to communicate effectively with people, which negatively impacted his career and finances. As a result, his wife Hannah had to become the primary breadwinner, which further irritated Rowan. He felt emasculated by her success, as she was doing a better job than he was. Despite their financial struggles, they decided to open their own fitness club. However, this decision was largely driven by Rowan's desire to control Hannah's every move and monitor her whereabouts. Rowan's behavior in the store mirrored his past actions at the gyms where he worked. He often felt the need to assert superiority over women. During a private training session with Sue's mother, he showed his cruel side, acting inappropriately instead of showing respect. He dropped Sue, causing her to hit her head and bleed, and laughed at her clumsiness, showing no sympathy. Despite this alarming behavior, Hannah's parents tried to accept him for their daughter's sake. Rowan's control over Hannah was all-encompassing, and he isolated her from her family and friends. He dictated who she could see and when, and even forbade the children from visiting their grandmother and Hannah from communicating with her brother, whom he disliked. As a result, Hannah felt trapped and enslaved, confined to the walls of her own home. Rowan's behavior towards Hannah was also emotionally and physically abusive. He would demand intimacy from her, and if she refused, he would become enraged, taking out his anger on her and the children. After forcing himself on her, he would then apologize insincerely, attributing his behavior to a burst of passion. Hannah's life was slowly under the constant control and cruelty of her husband, Rowan. Their marriage, once filled with love and passion, had degenerated into a nightmare of fear and submission. Rowan's tyrannical behavior had created a toxic environment where Hannah lived in constant terror of his wrath. Rowan's cruelty was not limited to Hannah, he also targeted their children. While some playful exchanges between parents and children are normal, Rowan frequently crossed the line, intentionally hurting and belittling them. When the children cried, he would mock them, showing no empathy or respect for their feelings. For example, a conflict between Rowan and his daughter Aaliyah turned disastrous when Rowan used excessive force, causing Aaliyah to hit her head. The injury was severe enough to require hospitalization and stitches. Instead of taking responsibility and apologizing, Rowan blamed Aaliyah for the incident. This was not an isolated incident, as Rowan had a history of tormenting his children. As an athlete, he would take ice baths after training, but he would also force his children, including his young son Trey, to sit in icy water, disregarding their tears and pleas for mercy. In the same year, Hannah's life took a drastic turn for the worse. Rowan, who had recently become interested in jiu-jitsu, returned home from a training session one day, still pumped up with adrenaline. Without warning, he physically attacked Hannah, grabbing her throat with a tight grip and uttering terrifying words. Consumed by fear, Hannah didn't immediately recognize that she was experiencing domestic violence. However, this incident was far more frightening than anything she had previously endured. As a result, Hannah made up her mind to leave Rowan at the earliest chance. After reaching out to the police, she provided a detailed account of the horrific experience to the officer. The police officer informed Hannah that forcing an intimate relationship without consent is a form of domestic violence. This conversation was a turning point for Hannah, helping her understand the situation and prompting her to take immediate action. She quickly gathered her children and left for her parents' house, trying to escape the abusive situation. Although their divorce was not yet finalized in November 2019, Hannah made the decision to allow Rowan to spend time with their children. However, she was aware that she had no legal authority to control this arrangement without a court's intervention. Even so, Hannah was still uneasy about leaving the children in Rowan's care. To fix his problem, Rowan was struggling to cope with his emotions and sought help from his church's pastor, Christopher. Christopher was a kind and supportive person who was always willing to listen. However, as Rowan began to open up to him, Christopher noticed some disturbing traits. Rowan had a desire for dominance and control, which he occasionally revealed when his confidence faltered. During one of these moments, Rowan confessed to Christopher that he was aware his actions were wrong and wanted to change, but didn't know how. Rowan's admission was a crucial step towards reform, and Christopher's guidance could have been instrumental in helping him. However, before progress could be made, a shocking event occurred. Hannah and her children were walking down the street when Rowan suddenly appeared out of nowhere, grabbed their daughter Lion, and disappeared. Hannah's life was turned upside down by unbearable anxiety and fear for her daughter Lion's safety. For 2 agonizing days, she had no idea where Lion was, and her distress grew by the minute. Hannah turned to the police, who launched a search and eventually found Lion safe and sound with her father. Although Lion was unharmed, the traumatic experience left a lasting impact on Hannah. The police, recognizing the danger that Hannah and her children faced, urged her to file a police report against her ex and obtain a protection order. However, despite the problems her ex, Rowan, had caused, he still had joint custody of the children, which he used to continue manipulating and abusing Hannah. After a meeting with Rowan, the children were returned to Hannah's parents. However, before leaving, Rowan attempted to humiliate Hannah by displaying pictures of her in her underwear on his car, in plain sight of their children. Hannah, enraged, tried to remove the photos, but Rowan responded violently. He grabbed her shoulder, twisted her arm, and punched her in the face, splitting her lip. The attack was only stopped when Hannah's mother, Sue, intervened. As Rowan drove away, he yelled insults. Hannah, traumatized, immediately reported the incident to the police, as it was a clear violation of the protection order. Unfortunately, the authorities were unable to respond in time, which ultimately led to a tragic outcome. It was a typical morning on February 19, 2020. Hannah grabbed her car keys and left her parents' house to drop off her 3 kids at kindergarten. Hannah and her children got into the car, but before they could leave, Rowan jumped in, causing Hannah to become frightened for their safety. She tried to calm Rowan down, but he was furious and began yelling threats and ordering Hannah to start the car and drive away. Hannah carefully drove off, trying not to escalate the situation. As she turned onto Raven Street, the car stopped. In a desperate and vengeful act, Rowan grabbed a canister of gasoline from under the car seat and drenched Hannah and her children with it. Michael ZCK, who happened to be nearby, witnessed the horrific scene. He said that earlier that morning, he had heard a car pull up outside his house. Hannah, frantic and pleading for help, screamed that Rowan was trying to kill her and pouring gasoline all over them. As Hannah begged for mercy, Rowan refused to let her go, his face twisted in a rage. Michael rushed to the car and was met with Rowan's emotionless face, holding a lighter in his hand. In the next moment, the car erupted in flames. The explosion was followed by blood-curdling screams, a deafening ringing, and then an eerie silence. Luckily, Hannah had narrowly escaped the inferno, but was left with severe burns and bleeding. Frantically, she pleaded for assistance, not for her own suffering, but for her children who remained trapped in the blazing car. A car happened to drive by, and a doctor who was not on duty stopped to offer assistance. Seeing Hannah's distress, the doctor rushed to her side. Meanwhile, Michael intervened quickly, grabbing a hose from his house to try and extinguish the flames. However, the fire was too intense, and it engulfed the entire car, leaving no hope of rescuing the children. The doctor and Michael yelled at Hannah to take cover and get away from the fire, but she was too consumed by grief to hear them. With growing desperation, Michael rushed to the car to rescue the children, but the intense flames and scorching heat thwarted his efforts. Hannah lay on the road, her body badly burned, repeatedly begging for someone to save her children. At that moment, no one grasped the full extent of the tragedy. Hannah's body was severely burned, with over 97% of her skin damaged, except for her feet. Despite her excruciating pain, Hannah's thoughts were consumed by her children, who were now left vulnerable and unprotected. Hannah's badly burned body left police doubting her survival chances. Yet, she refused to give up. With fierce determination, she provided a crucial testimony. Police officer Angus Cook carefully recorded every word Hannah spoke as she struggled to recount the events leading up to her tragic situation. With great difficulty, Hannah managed to name her ex-husband, Rowan Baxter, as the person responsible for her ordeal, and provided a detailed account of what had happened. As Hannah's voice grew weaker and her body frail, Officer Angus remained by her side, offering words of encouragement and praise for her bravery. He reassured her that she had already done enough and that everything would be okay. Hannah was on the brink of death, yet she didn't fully grasp the horror unfolding around her. When questioned about whether Rowan had threatened her earlier, she replied that he hadn't. As doctors approached to alleviate her suffering, she lost the ability to speak. Meanwhile, Rowan Baxter's behavior was erratic. Despite suffering severe burns covering 80% of his body, he managed to exit the car unassisted. Rowan sat on the road, staring at the burning vehicle. After a brief moment, he inexplicably climbed back into the car, which was engulfed in flames. A witness, putting their own life at risk, attempted to extinguish the fire at the back of the car. It was then that Rowan retrieved a knife from the vehicle and began to chase people away, preventing them from putting out the flames. The children, trapped in the burning car, had little chance of survival. Nevertheless, bystanders refused to give up their efforts to save them. Rowan refused to let anyone approach the car, claimed them to a horrific death. In a final, selfish act, he stabbed himself with the knife. Despite her own life-threatening injuries, her primary concern was for the health of her children and her desire to reveal the truth. Tragically, Hannah passed away in the hospital on the same day, at the young age of 31. Hannah was a victim of severe domestic violence, which also affected her children. She fought tirelessly to protect her family from their abuser, but sadly, her efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. Throughout her daily struggles, Hannah showed immense courage, standing up for her loved ones despite the numerous challenges she faced. For days later, a massive gathering took place to pay tribute to Hannah and her children. A lasting memorial, Hannah's House, was also created in Camp Hill, where a tree planting ceremony was held in her honor, accompanied by a plaque that tells the story of her life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Canny Alm. Canny Alm was born on July 18, 1974, in Malaysia. She was the younger of two daughters and enjoyed a very close relationship with her parents. In 1995, Canny moved to the United States to pursue higher education and a career in information technology. While living in the United States, Canny met a man named Brandon. He was a U.S. citizen and an ethnic Chinese whose parents emigrated from Singapore over 20 years ago. Initially, Canny and Brandon were just friends, but their friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. Brandon became a significant figure in Canny's life, supporting and helping her in various ways. They got married in 2001. Canny's life was on track in 2003. She was working as an analyst in San Diego, planning a future with her husband, and hoping to start a family. Her life changed dramatically that year. The trouble began when Canny's father, Ong Bai Yong, was diagnosed with cancer. Canny decided to fly to Malaysia to support her family during this difficult time. On June 1, 2003, Canny and her husband, Brandon, arrived in Malaysia. However, Brandon returned to the USA after a few days, leaving Canny to care for her father in Kuala Lumpur. Despite the distance, Canny and Brandon stayed close through daily phone calls. They would talk for hours, sharing stories about their daily lives, including their two pets. Canny's father underwent surgery to remove a kidney, but fortunately, his health began to recover. As he improved, Canny planned her return to the USA, scheduling a flight for June 14, 2003. Canny organized a farewell dinner at a local restaurant the evening before her departure, and she invited her mother, sister, and closest friends to join her. That evening, June 13, 2003, Canny and her mother arrived at the designated meeting spot later than the others. They had trouble finding a parking spot in front of the mall, so Canny parked in the underground lot. However, her mother was concerned about the poor lighting in the lot, rather than the parking fee. Once they arrived at the second-floor restaurant, Kenny was excited to reunite with her childhood friends, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. They spent a few hours catching up, but Kenny soon noticed that her mother, Pearlie, was starting to look tired. When Kenny asked if her mother wanted to head home, Pearlie said she had a lot to do that day, but was okay with leaving early and promised her friends she would be back soon. Kenny, her mother, and her sister Elsie got up from the table to pay for their parking. They went to the payment terminal, which was located on the first floor, a floor above the underground parking lot. As they waited in line for the terminal, Kenny realized she had left the parking ticket in their car. She asked her sister and mother to stay in line while she went back down to retrieve the ticket. Elsie and Pearlie waited for 10 more minutes, but Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, her sister started calling her. The first call went unanswered, and the second one was sent to voicemail. This was unusual, and Elsie and Pearlie immediately sensed that something was wrong. They quickly went to the parking lot, where they were shocked to find that Kenny's car was no longer there. They searched the parking lot several times to make sure, and after confirming that the car was indeed gone, they realized that Kenny must have disappeared along with it. Pearlie was certain that something had happened to her daughter, as Kenny would never leave without saying anything. Although the parking lot was poorly lit, it had surveillance cameras that might provide some clues about what had happened. The mall security initially refused to show Kenny's relatives the footage, but relented after her mother begged for their help. At midnight, Pearlie and Elsie sat in front of a monitor and watched the shocking footage, which confirmed their worst fears. The footage revealed Kenny's car speeding out of the underground parking lot, crashing through the barrier. Although the footage quality was poor, it was evident that a man was driving, with Kenny in the passenger seat. Her body was positioned as if she was trying to distance herself from the driver, leaning against the door. Upon seeing the footage, Pearlie immediately filed a disappearance and kidnapping report at a police station. The police launched an investigation, while Kenny's family and friends drove around Kuala Lumpur, desperately searching for her purple Proton tiara. Meanwhile, Brandon, Kenny's husband, began to feel a sense of unease. He tried calling his wife multiple times, but she didn't answer. He then contacted her mother, who informed him about the events that had transpired. The news of Kenny's disappearance left Brandon in shock. Pearlie could hear him sobbing over the phone. As dawn broke, Kenny's friends and family reluctantly returned home, their search efforts having yielded no results. The police disseminated information about the disappearance and conducted their own search, but unfortunately, it didn't lead to any breakthroughs. Even the footage from the mall's parking lot where Kenny was kidnapped failed to provide any leads on identifying the driver of the car. More than 72 hours have passed since Kenny's loved ones last saw her. Authorities believe that if she was kidnapped, it wasn't for ransom. If money was the motive, the kidnapper would have demanded it by now. A disturbing find was made by police when they discovered Kenny's car left empty on a city street. The front right tire was severely damaged, indicating it had been driven on while flat for some time, causing it to shred. In the back of the car, a large red stain was found on the passenger seat. Forensic experts collected evidence, including scrapings from the back seat, fingerprints from the steering wheel, and other parts of the car. There were many clues found in the vehicle. Kenny's family and friends held on to hope and prayed for her safe return. However, their hopes were crushed the next day after her car was found. On June 17, a road worker detected a strong, foul smell coming from a manhole near the highway. Upon lifting the lid, he discovered a body that someone had attempted to burn using 2 car tires and sticks. A team of leading forensic experts from the Royal Malaysian Police immediately arrived at the scene. They found 2 car tires filled with concrete, which had been used as stands for road signs, lying on top of the body. It appeared that whoever had hidden the body, trying to make it harder to identify. Although the discovery of the body seemed to confirm the family's worst fears, Kenny's mother, Pearlie, refused to believe that her daughter was dead without official confirmation. "Until they confirm it, we will continue to hope that she will turn up alive," she said. The family went to the morgue, but the doctor said that they couldn't confirm the identity of the body yet. Kenny's family members provided DNA samples for comparative analysis. Unfortunately, the results confirmed their worst nightmare. The body was indeed that of their daughter, Kenny. Some sources claim that before the DNA test results, Kenny's family identified the jewelry on the body. However, as a loving mother, Pearlie held on to the hope that her daughter was still alive until the very end. The emotional torture she endured is unimaginable. The autopsy revealed that Kenny had 2 stab wounds to her abdomen, and a medical forensics expert found signs of strangulation. A cloth was tied around her neck in multiple knots, and semen was found inside her body, which served as a source of DNA. A few days after the body was discovered, an incident raised questions about the work of police. An undercover policeman, Subramaniam Ravichandran, reported to his superiors that on the night of Kenny's disappearance, he was on duty with his partner, patrolling the streets of Kuala Lumpur at night on their motorcycles. Both officers were dressed in civilian clothes. They noticed a car parked incorrectly, taking up half the road, and stopped to investigate if anyone was inside. Ravichandran approached the driver's door and saw a man behind the wheel with a woman in the passenger seat. He knocked on the window, and when the man lowered it partially, Ravichandran displayed his police ID and asked what they were doing. The driver replied they were just chatting and not doing anything illegal. Ravichandran then requested to see their IDs. As the driver handed over the documents, she in the passenger seat made unusual hand gestures, seemingly asking for help, but stopped whenever her assumed boyfriend looked at her. Noticing this, Ravichandran asked the driver to step out of the car. However, the driver responded aggressively, claiming Ravichandran was not a police officer but a thief. He then raised the window and reached for the ignition. Realizing the car might drive off, Ravichandran drew his pistol and shot the right front wheel. Despite this, the car sped away. Ravichandran and his partner pursued on a motorcycle but were unable to catch up, which is puzzling given the car had a flat tire. At the time, the Malaysian Police Department was in a state of disarray, which might explain why the officer didn't call for backup or report the incident. The car with a flat tire was a purple Proton Tiara, driven by 27-year-old Ahmad Najib bin Aris, accompanied by a woman named Kenny Alm. Although the police chase did not result in an immediate arrest, the officers managed to obtain documents from the driver. Tragically, Kenny Alm was later found dead. It is possible that if the officer had acted differently during the encounter, the outcome might have been different. Unfortunately, Ravichandran only informed his superiors about the incident after Kenny's body was discovered. The only positive outcome of that night was that the police had obtained documents that could help identify the suspect. Besides Kenny's family, many Malaysians attended her farewell ceremony. Her death was a devastating loss for her husband, Brandon. Meanwhile, the police launched a search for Ahmad Najib. They discovered that he didn't live at the address listed in his documents, but his name was genuine, providing multiple leads to track him down. The police searched for Ahmad Najib's name in the Registry of Documented Marriages and the National Agency of Social Support. They found a match, revealing that Ahmad Najib bin Aris was born and raised in Muar, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 siblings and had dropped out of school to work and support his family. In 1998, he moved from Muar to Kuala Lumpur, where he got married and had 2 children. Since 2000, he had worked as a cabin cleaner for Malaysia Airlines. Knowing the name of Ahmad Najib's wife and her workplace, the police began surveillance. She worked at a metropolitan bank, and after her shift ended, undercover police officers followed her to determine her home address. Now that they knew where Ahmad Najib lived, the police had to ensure he was inside the house without alerting him. For 3 days, they monitored the house, but Ahmad Najib didn't appear. At one point, investigators doubted whether Ahmad Najib still lived with his family, but this was a hasty conclusion. On the 4th day of surveillance, at around 4 a.m., a cab pulled up to the house, and Ahmad Najib stepped out. Within a minute, he was handcuffed and taken to the police station for questioning. News of the arrest and the suspect's identity quickly reached the press. Many people who knew Ahmad Najib were shocked to learn that he was suspected of kidnapping and killing Kani Aung. Those who knew him described Ahmad Najib as a devoted husband, a caring father of 2, and an overall good person. However, investigators soon discovered that he may have been hiding a darker side. During the initial interrogation, Ahmad Najib remained calm and requested to speak only with the head of the Criminal Investigation Division. It wasn't until he was presented with evidence linking him to Kani Aung that Ahmad Najib began to deny any wrongdoing. His confidence seemed to wane as the evidence mounted. Investigators showed him 2 IDs that he had given to an officer on the night of Kani Aung's kidnapping. They also revealed that they had found bloodstains on his jacket and jeans, which DNA analysis would likely confirm to be Kani Aung's blood. After realizing the officers had solid evidence and were not bluffing, Ahmad Najib confessed to kidnapping and killing Kani Aung. Within 10 days of the kidnapping, on June 23, 2003, he was taken to court, where he repeated his confession. The police then conducted an investigative experiment where Ahmad Najib showed them all the locations he had been with Kani Aung. He provided a detailed account of how he forced her to be intimate with him multiple times, how he took her life, and how he attempted to dispose of her body. Evidence supporting his statements was found at all the locations he led the police to. The investigation began at the underground parking lot, where cameras captured footage of Ahmad Najib. According to his statement, he was waiting for his former boss, who had fired him and whom he sought revenge against. However, the claim about the former boss was never verified. Hiding in the darkness, he observed Kani Aung searching for something in her car and seized the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. He forcefully pushed her into the car, issuing threats that if she attempted to escape or seek help, she would face dire consequences. Overwhelmed, Kani Aung became disoriented and obediently followed his instructions. Next, he took the driver's seat and sped out of the parking lot. After crashing through a barrier, he stopped in an industrial area, where he began to harass Kani Aung. Just as this was happening, a plainclothes police officer approached the car. Ahmad Najib falsely told the officer that he didn't know he had taken the wrong person until the officer asked him and his victim for their identification. Even assuming Ahmad Najib had intended to kidnap his former boss, his guilt remains unchanged. Undoubtedly, his former boss would have suffered the same fate as Kani Aung. According to Ahmad Najib's account, he managed to evade the pursuing officer. Despite the officer possessing his documents, Ahmad Najib failed to consider releasing Kani Aung. Instead, he stopped the car on the street to replace a tire damaged by a bullet. Nearby, a car containing a woman was parked at the spot where he had pulled over. He approached she and asked for a car jack, intending to change his tire. However, he noticed Kani Aung signaling to she, who then handed him the jack. He abandoned the idea of changing the tire and drove off immediately. Later, he stopped at a secluded area and used a knife to threaten Kani Aung, forcing her to engage in intimate acts with him. Afterwards, he drove to another district where he coerced Kani Aung into satisfying him again, with both of them in the back seat. Kani Aung pleaded for mercy, but he took her life instead. He then disposed of her body in a manhole near a highway, moved the car to another location, and left it there. 16 hours later, he returned to the scene with a gasoline canister in an attempt to conceal evidence of the crime. DNA analysis confirmed that the semen found in Kani Aung's body belonged to Ahmad Najib bin Aris. His DNA was also discovered in the car, along with his fingerprints, providing further irrefutable proof of his guilt. Additionally, the analysis revealed that the blood on his jacket and jeans belonged to Canny Ong. The trial began on September 15, 2003, 3 months after Canny Ong's death. This high-profile case drew widespread attention from the Malaysian media and public. The trial attracted not only ordinary Malaysians and journalists but also individuals seeking to boost their reputation, including numerous attorneys representing Ahmad Najib. Despite admitting guilt during the investigation, overwhelming evidence, including DNA proof, Ahmad Najib changed his stance after consulting 6 attorneys. At his first trial, he claimed his confession was made under police pressure. However, the judge before whom Ahmad Najib confessed immediately after his arrest testified that there were no signs of physical abuse, and Ahmad Najib appeared calm and relaxed. The attorneys then shifted their strategy, arguing that Canny Ong was in the car with Ahmad Najib voluntarily. They suggested that Canny Ong, a black belt in Taekwondo, should have attempted to escape if she were being held against her will. However, this attempt to blame Canny Ong was rejected, as people respond differently to critical situations. However, another claim surfaced, stating that Canny Ong had consensual intimacy with Ahmad Najib and that Canny Ong's death was caused by strangulation used to heighten the experience. Forensic experts disagreed with and rejected this account of what happened. The cloth around Canny's neck was tied in multiple knots, suggesting that Canny Ong had no intention of loosening it. Indeed, the cloth was so tight that the skin beneath was the only area on the body not affected by the fire. Furthermore, the cloth was a type used for cleaning plane windows, and given the defendant's job as a cabin cleaner, this linked him more closely to the crime. Additionally, the lawyers struggled to explain the stab wounds on Canny's body. At this point, Ahmad Najib's attorneys advised him to remain silent and not testify. Many questioned why Canny didn't escape the car when she had at least 2 chances to do so. On February 23, 2005, Ahmad Najib bin Aris was convicted of all charges connected to the crime committed against Canny Ong. The evidence pointed to him as the sole perpetrator. Ahmad Najib received the maximum sentence under Malaysian law, 20 years imprisonment and 10 strokes of the cane for violating Canny Ong's sexual integrity, plus the death penalty for causing her death. In Malaysia, the death penalty is carried out by hanging, a method that differs significantly from the lethal injection used in some other countries, such as the USA. Ahmad Najib's lawyers attempted to appeal the sentence twice but were unsuccessful both times. In 2010, Ahmad Najib petitioned the head of state to commute his death sentence to life imprisonment, maintaining his innocence. However, his plea for clemency was rejected. More than 13 years after Canny Ong's death, on September 23, 2016, Ahmad Najib's sentence was carried out. He was 40 years old at the time of his execution. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Jake Wagner. Hannah Mae Roden, 13, and Edward Jake Wagner, 18, met at a dance and quickly became lovers. As a result, the Roden and Wagner families began to spend time together, sharing weekends and parties, and Hannah Mae and Jake's love continued to grow. When Hannah Mae turned 15 years old, she revealed that she was pregnant. Jake was delighted with the news and hoped his family would be too. The Wagner family placed great emphasis on tradition and family lineage, and they adored children, viewing them as a continuation of their traditions. In fact, they often passed the name down from generation to generation, as seen in Jake's family, with his father being George Wagner III and his brother George Wagner IV. On the other hand, the Roden family had a more practical approach to family life. Even though they were divorced, Christopher Roden Sr. and Dana Roden remained close and devoted to their 3 children, prioritizing their happiness above all else. Unlike the Wagner family, the Rodens lived modestly, with Christopher working odd jobs and Dana as a nurse's assistant. Despite economic limitations, the Roden family instilled strong traditional values in their children, including Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, and Clarence, Frankie. The family was overjoyed when Hannah Mae gave birth to a daughter named Sophie, and they threw a big party. However, when Jake asked Hannah Mae to move in with him and his family, she refused. She became increasingly wary of Jake due to his increasingly controlling and aggressive behavior. Hannah Mae was initially attracted to Jake's caring and thoughtful nature, but over time, she realized that Jake was trying to limit her independence. Jake's aggression repeatedly caused Hannah Mae's feelings for him to cool. Her refusal to move in with Jake created tension with him. Jake believed that Hannah Mae was preventing Sophie from growing up in a safe and healthy environment. Despite Hannah Mae's denials, Jake became increasingly controlling. Hannah Mae finally ended the relationship in March 2015, tired of Jake's aggressive behavior. At that point, the Wagner family wanted sole custody of Sophie. Jake had to put in a lot of effort to convince Hannah Mae to sign over custody of the children to him and his brother. However, Hannah Mae refused. In a heated exchange, Jake angrily sent a text message saying that if necessary, he would use force to gain custody of Sophie. This revelation confirmed the Wagner family's willingness to use coercion and intimidation to achieve their goals. To protect herself and her daughter from this unscrupulous family, Hannah decided to distance herself and raise her child alone. She chose to work as a nursing assistant, continued her studies, and took care of Sophie herself. The situation escalated when Hannah became pregnant again. Although Hannah confirmed that the child was not Jake's, he still had doubts and tried to discover the truth. In December 2015, Jake logged into Hannah's social media accounts but found no evidence of an affair. A trial ensued, involving repeated interactions between the Wagner family and Hannah. In one text message, Hannah asserted that the Wagner family would have to get rid of her before they could gain custody of Sophie. Jake shared this letter with his family, angering them. His grandmother, Rita Newcomb, 65, retaliated by forging an important custody-related document. During the custody trial for Sophie, Christopher Roden and George Wagner III had a heated argument. This incident caused a complete rift in the relationship between the two families. The Wagner family soon came up with a terrible idea. They believed that Hannah Roden was uncooperative and decided that the only solution was to eliminate her and the entire Roden family in order to gain custody of Sophie. By Christmas 2016, this twisted idea was the start of a terrible crime. While everyone focused on love and celebration during the holiday season, the Wagner family had other intentions. They held a family vote to decide whether to continue with their evil plan or not. After everyone agreed, they assigned each person roles and began preparing. The Wagner family spent 5 months researching the Roden family home, including surveillance cameras, daily habits, and work schedules of each Roden family member. Each member of the Wagner family was assigned a specific task. Angela Wagner purchased a communications blocking device and planned to secretly install it on the Roden family's phone to prevent anyone from being able to contact the police. George Wagner III offered to build a homemade silencer and handle transportation the night of the crime, securing a truck and not attracting attention. Meanwhile, Sophie was safe at home with Angela because the court had awarded Hannah and Jake joint custody of Sophie. The Wagner family chose the time when it was their turn to care for Sophie in order to keep Sophie safe. It was clear that the Wagner family had meticulously planned every detail to carry out a perfect execution. At approximately 8 a.m. on April 22, 2016, George Wagner III visited Christopher Roden under the pretense of offering Christopher a job opportunity that could improve his family's financial situation. However, the job offer was just an excuse to get into the house. A moment later, Christopher Roden Sr. opened the door. A while later, as usual, Bobby Jo Manley arrived at Christopher's house to take care of the Roden family's animals. While outside the house, she noticed someone was inside, which was unusual for that time of day. Every member of the Roden family usually went about their work and was not at home. However, when she entered the house, she found Christopher and his cousin Gary, 38, lying in a pool of blood. Horrified, Bobby grabbed the phone and called emergency services, reporting what she had seen and asking for assistance. Still shaking, Bobby went to other relatives' houses and knocked loudly on one of their doors. A 3-year-old boy, the son of Clarence Frankie Roden, appeared, and Bobby asked him where his parents were. However, the boy did not respond but just pointed towards the bed. When she entered the house, she witnessed another horrifying scene. Clarence and his wife, Hannah Hazel, lay motionless. Lying between them was their 6-month-old baby, still alive but covered in the blood of Clarence and Hannah Hazel. After Bobby's 911 call, police quickly arrived on the scene. As the officers approached the Roden property, a neighbor intervened, sensing worried. He requested that the officers check 2 additional addresses of family members. His concern was justified, as police found bloodied bodies in the 3rd house. The victims were identified as Dana, 19-year-old Hannah Mae, and 16-year-old Christopher Jr. The attackers had spared Hannah's youngest child, a baby girl only a few days old. Later, another victim was discovered, 44-year-old Kenneth, the elder Roden's brother, who lived a 15-minute walk from the others. By 2 p.m., 8 victims had been identified: Christopher Sr., Dana, Clarence, Hannah Hazel, Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, Kenneth, and Gary. The only survivors were young children, a 3-year-old, a 6-month-old and a 4-day-old newborn, along with 2-year-old Sophie, who was at the Wagner home at the time of the incident. After examining the bodies, police concluded that all the victims had been killed in their sleep by gunshot wounds. Detectives later reconstructed the events of that day. Christopher Sr. was awake when the attackers burst into the house, as evidenced by a wound on his right arm. Christopher Sr. attempted to defend himself but was hit with 9 shots to the head, torso, and limbs. In addition, 5 bullets were removed from Dana Roden's neck and head. The rest of the family died from gunshot wounds to the head. Gary was shot 5 times, Christopher Jr. 4 times, Clarence and his wife Hannah Hazel 3 times each, and Hannah Mae twice. Kenneth was the only one shot once. In total, the assailant fired 32 shots, with some shots fired after the victims were already dead. Some bodies also showed signs of physical abuse. Since no one in the area heard anything, investigators believe the perpetrators used silencers, indicating a carefully planned and executed act. It was clear that the victims were targeted, and someone wanted revenge on the entire Roden family. During the search, police found 5 Remington shell casings of different types and an unused bullet from a different gun model. The scale of the case shows that this was a case with multiple murderers. Leonard Manley, Dana's father, claimed that the criminals must have known the family well, or the dogs would have been barking loudly. The question of who committed this act kept police officers busy. The Attorney General's office provided over $20,000 for the Roden family's funeral. Roden family were buried in several stages. On April 28, 2016, Gary was the first to be laid to rest in South Shore, Kentucky. Hannah Hazel's funeral followed on May 1 in the village of Atway, Coteau County, Ohio. The remaining members were buried on May 3 in West Portsmouth, in the same county. Many local residents attended to pay their respects to the family. The surviving children were placed in the care of relatives. The neighborhood was gripped by fear. Police advised relatives of the victims to take precautions and warned all residents of Pike to stay their homes at night. The brutal mass murder outraged residents across the state, who demanded that the investigation's findings be made public and the perpetrators be caught as soon as possible. As part of the investigation, the murdered family's 3 homes had been investigated, followed by several more vehicles the following day. Forensic experts had participated in the investigation and had meticulously examined the homes, but no DNA evidence of the suspects had been found in any of the homes. Cameras had been installed in the houses, but they had not provided any useful information because they had been disabled. It seemed the culprit had planned every detail carefully, leaving no clues behind. However, detectives eventually discovered a key piece of evidence that had helped solve the case. An important detail was that marijuana plants were discovered at 3 crime scenes. At one location, around 200 plants were found. The police believed the cannabis was grown for sale rather than personal use. This led to speculation about the involvement of Mexican drug traffickers. However, the amount of cannabis found was too small to suggest an attack by an entire cartel. In January 2017, a close relative of the Rodin family was arrested for drug trafficking. This was considered a coincidental circumstance. Leonard Manley stated that his daughter, Dana, had no involvement with the cannabis operations. Some family members confirmed that the older brothers, Christopher and Kenneth Rodin, grew marijuana, but they were unaware of any large-scale cultivation. Specialized equipment for breeding chickens for fighting, as well as cages with roosters, were found at the Rodin's house. However, it soon became clear that illegal cockfighting was not the cause of the homicides either. Months went by without uncovering the true motive behind the crime. On April 13, 2017, local authorities announced they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. Nevertheless, prosecutor Rob Young stated the investigation was ongoing, suggesting they had some leads they were not yet ready to disclose. Another year had passed since the mass crime occurred, and its second memorial service went largely unnoticed. There was no coverage in the local press, and neither the sheriff or the prosecutor attended the memorial service. This led the community to believe that the investigation had stalled. However, on May 12, 2017, a special weapons and tactics team unexpectedly raided a home in Pike County, about 10 miles from the crime scene. Initially, they were searching for suspects, but it was later revealed that they were gathering evidence. Detectives also searched a house in Adams County that had once been owned by Jake Wagner, although he had sold it by then. The investigation took a dramatic turn on June 20, 2017, when the focus shifted to the Wagner family. The investigation included 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived approximately 15 miles from the victim. The Wagner family moved to Kenai, Alaska, claiming they were struggling to stay in the area. The Wagner family expressed their love for the Rodin family, saying their deaths had devastated the Wagner family. The investigation indeed had a breakthrough. Authorities were seeking information from the public about the Wagner family's dealings in guns, ammunition, vehicles, and other related topics. According to the investigation, every family member was involved in the crime that occurred on November 13, 2018. The Attorney General announced that the Wagners and their sons had been arrested and charged with planning and carrying out the murder. Rita Newcomb, the 65-year-old mother of Angela, and Frida Wagner, the mother of George Wagner III, had also been arrested for perjury and obstruction of justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb had undergone handwriting analysis to confirm her role in forging guardianship documents for Sophie. To avoid going to jail, she had entered a plea deal. As a result, the charges against Frederica Wagner were dropped in June 2019. 2 years later, on April 22, 2021, Jake had reached an agreement with the prosecution. In exchange for revealing details of the crime, all family members would receive life sentences instead of the death penalty. Jake had admitted to killing 5 of the 8 individuals and had received 23 criminal charges, including 8 felonies. The remaining charges had included theft, conspiracy, illegal possession of ammunition, forgery, interception of messages, unlawful use of property, obstruction of justice, corrupt activities, and unlawful intimate conduct with a young woman. Jake had explained that he saw eliminating Hannah May as the only way to ensure custody of his daughter. He believed that if he did not kill the entire Roden family, they would seek revenge and refuse to give custody of Sophie to him. Angela was next to face trial on September 10th. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy, aggravated robbery, and tampering with evidence. In exchange for her testimony against the other defendants, the murder charge was dropped. Angela received a sentence of 30 years in prison. The trial of George Wagner had begun on August 28, 2022. Although he denied any involvement in the crime, the prosecution presented evidence of his participation in the planning, execution, and cover-up. Ultimately, George IV was found guilty on 22 counts and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. George III's trial was scheduled for February 2024. Despite the convictions of his family members, he maintained his innocence. The once harmonious family's descent into madness was baffling, and their actions were unforgivable. The actions of the Wagner family left 3 children orphaned, depriving them of the love of their parents, relatives, and a peaceful life. One couldn't help but wonder what Sophie would be like when she grew up and realized what had happened. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ayla Reynolds. Ayla Reynolds was born in Waterville, Maine on April 4, 2010. A beautiful girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a captivating smile, she adored music and dancing. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin Dietro, had a brief romance in 2009, leading to Trista's pregnancy. Though initially surprised, Justin's resemblance to Ayla was undeniable. A paternity test in 2010 made him accept his parenthood. Consequently, in December, he was ordered to provide child support. Trista and Justin didn't have a custody agreement, but Trista, who lived in Portland, had primary custody of Ayla, thanks to an arrangement between them. Only in mid-2011, after Ayla's first birthday, did Justin start having visits with her. He lived an hour and a half away, and the encounters were during the day and very brief. They agreed he could occasionally take Ayla with him, but never overnight. After giving birth to Ayla, Trista became pregnant again with her fiancé Raymond's child. In 2011, Ayla welcomed a baby brother, Raymond Jr. However, Trista's life took a dramatic turn on October 13, 2011, when she had a run-in with Child Services. They issued her an ultimatum: get substance abuse treatment or risk losing custody of her children. Trista opted for rehab, leaving Ayla and Raymond Jr. in the care of her mom and sister, determined to reunite with them and avoid losing them permanently. By October 2011, Justin had met with Ayla around 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista's funeral, on October 17th, Justin and his family suddenly decided to seek custody of Ayla. Justin's mother, Phoebe DiPetro, got in touch with Child Protective Services and was granted permission to take Ayla into their care. The authorities quickly informed Trista's relatives of their decision. However, when Ayla's aunt was told she had to hand Ayla over, she strongly opposed the decision, alleging that Justin had a history of abusing the child. The officials countered that a father's custody rights take precedence over those of an aunt. Once permission was granted, Justin and his family went to pick up Ayla from her Aunt Jessica's house, but they didn't know the address. Child protection officials provided the location, and a police officer, Charles Weaver, accompanied Justin and his mother to the house. The paternal grandmother waited in the car while Justin and the officer went to the door. When they arrived, Jessica begged the officer not to take Ayla away and warned that she wouldn't give her up willingly. The officer noted that Ayla seemed happy and carefree at first, laughing and playing. However, Jessica pointed out that Ayla's behavior changed dramatically when Justin approached. As soon as Ayla saw her father, she burst into tears and tried to get away from him. Despite this, the officer took Ayla from Jessica and handed her over to Justin. The child struggled and screamed, even trying to bite the officer when she was placed in her father's arms. Jessica told Officer Charles that Ayla was terrified of Justin and that they couldn't take her away from her. Charles explained that he sympathized, but as a police officer, he had to enforce the directive from Child Services, and it wasn't his decision to make. To clarify, if Justin had wanted primary physical custody of Ayla, he would have needed to either reach an agreement with her mother or go through a court process to get a judge's approval. However, as we saw in the custody exchange, there was no agreement or court involvement. Instead, a Child Protective Services supervisor made a judgment, but failed to consider the mother's own arrangements for the child to stay with her relatives during her temporary absence. Before a court grants a parent exclusive physical custody, they typically evaluate the situation thoroughly, including background checks and home visits, which did not happen in Ayla's case. In custody cases, the child's best interest should always come first. However, there was reportedly no evidence to support the decision that was made. Many analysts believe that only an imminent danger to the child's safety could outweigh the stability and continuity of staying with her maternal relatives. If Child Protective Services officials believed Ayla was at risk, it's unclear why they only removed Ayla and not her little brother Raymond as well. The father took Ayla to his childhood home in Waterville, where he lived with his mother Phoebe, 47, his sister Alicia, 24, and her baby daughter Gabriella, who like Ayla was an infant at the time. Justin, 25, lived in the partially finished basement, a single large room, while the rest of the family occupied the upstairs area. During Trista's rehabilitation, she called Justin every day to speak with Ayla and ensure everything was going smoothly. She did not perceive any warning signs during these conversations. On October 20th, 2011, coinciding with the 8th day of Trista's treatment, a meeting was held to discuss Ayla's case. Attendees included Child Protective Services members, 2 doctors, Trista, her sister Jessica, and their lawyer, as well as Justin, who participated via phone. This meeting resulted in an agreement that Ayla would be returned to her mother on October 22, 2011, upon Trista's completion of the addiction recovery program. It was also agreed that Justin would bring Ayla to the treatment center for a visit on the 21st. Things were going well for Trista, but the situation was about to take a turn. None of the established agreements were fulfilled, leaving Trista desperate to regain custody of her daughter. She repeatedly reached out to Child Protective Services for assistance in enforcing the agreement, but to no avail. As a result, Trista sought a temporary compromise with Justin. He would continue to care for the child, and she would receive regular visitation rights. On November 12, 2011, Justin took the girl to the emergency room. Following a thorough examination, doctors diagnosed a broken bone in one of her joints, specifically the elbow joint that connects the upper arm to the elbow. Justin claimed the accident had occurred the previous night, on November 11th, stating that he slipped and fell on her while holding Ayla on the porch during a rainstorm. According to him, although she cried, there were no visible injuries, and it wasn't until the next morning that it became apparent she required urgent medical attention. By the next Monday, the orthopedist concluded that surgery would not be necessary, and the injury would likely heal on its own. A week later, on November 26th, the specialist reported during the 3rd medical appointment that the child's progress was as expected. Trista attended this medical consultation to closely monitor her daughter's recovery, unaware that it would be the last time she would hold her in her arms. From that point on, the situation quickly deteriorated. Frustrated by the ongoing disputes over custody, visitation rights, and even her right to talk to her daughter on the phone, Trista decided to take action. On December 15, 2011, she filed court papers to initiate legal proceedings to gain full physical custody of Ayla. On Saturday, December 17th, 2 days later, Justin contacted the police in the morning to report that Ayla was missing from his mother's house, where he was living with his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and his sister Alicia. According to him, they had put the 20-month-old girl to bed the previous night, and when they woke up early that morning, she was no longer there. Trista was on her way to visit her boyfriend Raymond in a coastal city in Maine, just 50 miles from the Canadian border, when she received devastating news. She was dozing in the passenger seat while her father-in-law, Robert, drove. Robert took a call from Trista's father, who informed him that Trista's baby, Ayla, was missing. The news left Robert frozen, and he searched for a safe place to stop the car and wake Trista. Groggy, Trista listened as her father's voice came through the phone, informing her that her baby's whereabouts were unknown. Desperate, Trista changed course, heading to meet the police who were searching for Ayla. The 90-minute journey felt like an eternity to Trista, who frantically called Justin to find out what had happened, but her calls went unanswered, leaving her terrified. When they arrived at the police station, both Trista and Robert gave statements to the authorities. About 30 minutes later, Trista's father joined them, visibly angry and distressed. It turned out that Justin had called 911 that morning at 8:49 to report Ayla's disappearance. He claimed the last time someone saw Ayla was around 10 p.m. the previous night, when his sister Alicia checked on her before bed. However, on Saturday morning, they discovered Ayla was no longer in her crib, but Justin didn't specify the exact time of her disappearance in the call. Justin suspected that an unknown intruder had kidnapped the toddler. The news of Ayla's disappearance spread rapidly, and the authorities quickly launched an investigation. The police chief addressed the media, assuring them that the case was being thoroughly investigated and that their primary objective was to find Ayla by any means. The police searched the house for any potential clues that could lead them to Ayla, facilitating their operation. Meanwhile, the family stayed with friends, and a command center was set up to coordinate the search efforts. On the third day, Monday, December 19th, the FBI was requested to assist in the search operation. By this point, 75 individuals from various agencies were involved in the efforts. The state police seized 2 vehicles from the Petro residence, a 1996 Ford Explorer, owned by Justin, and a 4-door silver sedan, owned by Justin's girlfriend Courtney, who was present on the night of Ayla's disappearance. The search for Ayla expanded, with the FBI's child abduction team conducting door-to-door interviews. 75 officers worked tirelessly, investing 5,000 hours in 10 days, pursuing 330 leads. 50 civilian volunteers and a $30,000 reward aided the effort. Justin initially kept a low profile, avoiding media. However, he made more public appearances, including on the Today's Show, where he addressed the shift in law enforcement's message. He appealed to the perpetrator to return Ayla, emphasizing they had no right to keep her, and she needed to be with her family at home. Justin attributed his delayed cooperation to his initial naivety, having expected Ayla to return within a few weeks. He also stated that law enforcement had advised him to avoid the press, which was partially confirmed by the Department of Public Safety spokesperson. However, the spokesperson clarified that this guidance was only provided at the beginning of the investigation. Subsequently, the police actually encouraged Ayla's parents to remain in the public eye. Justin took the opportunity to respond to the insinuations against him, inviting the TV host to spend a day with him to gain first-hand experience of his situation. While he praised the police's efforts, he acknowledged that some of their methods were unpleasant. He emphasized that the truth remains the same, regardless of how many times he was asked the same questions and accused of lying, believing that the truth will eventually emerge. By the end of January, Police discovered Ayla's blood in several areas of the DPO house and announced their findings. Although there was not enough evidence to make arrests, 3 adults, including Justin, Courtney, and Elisha, who lived in the residence where Ayla was last seen, were suspects. According to Stephen McCausland, spokesperson for the Department of Public Safety, the forensic evidence contradicted the family's story of what happened, making it highly unlikely that someone could have taken Ayla from her bedroom without one of the 3 adults in the house noticing. 6 months after Ayla's disappearance was reported on May 30th, 2012, the police announced that it was unlikely the little girl was still alive. Trista's family invited journalists into their home to watch the press conference where this news was delivered. Trista broke down in tears, and her grief soon turned to anger as she accused Justin of killing her baby. For Trista's family, learning the details of forensic tests conducted at Justin's family's house was extremely difficult. They already knew that Ayla's blood had been found, and they had been told the amount was equivalent to 25% of her blood volume. However, they had not seen the evidence until January 2013, when everything was finally revealed to them. The investigation uncovered disturbing evidence. The baby seat in Justin's 1996 Ford Explorer had Ayla's blood on the left shoulder strap. Dried gastric fluid was found on the back seats. In Ayla's bedroom, blood was discovered on her princess pink sneakers next to her crib, as well as on the face and arms of her doll. Investigators believed Ayla might have tried to wipe blood from her mouth with her toy. Additionally, a blood stain was found on the living room sofa. Most of the blood traces were found in the basement. On the mattress where Justin slept with Courtney, a pool of Ayla's blood was discovered. Nearby on the bed, vomit and an unidentified pink fiber, possibly from a toy, were found next to the sneakers stained with Ayla's blood on the tongue and inside. Additionally, splashes of blood were found on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls, with some of the splashes on the walls matching Ayla's height. An expert concluded that some of the blood drops, about the size of a dime, were indicative of trauma caused by a blunt object. The experts also determined that some blood spatter patterns in the house might have been coughed up by Ayla, suggesting that she had both internal and external injuries. The police found that bed linens had been used to clean up Ayla's blood. This information was horrific for Trista and her family to learn, and they soon discovered even more disturbing details. Officers warned Trista about disturbing evidence, then showed her luminol test results revealing hidden bloodstains at her house. She was devastated, fled the station in panic, and became convinced Ayla was murdered, declining to see more evidence. Justin showed no emotion when police showed him and the Petro family evidence months prior. The family they stayed with during the relocation also declined to see photos, citing disinterest. Justin's girlfriend, who was with him the night Ayla disappeared, had the same indifferent reaction to the findings. Trista spoke out 8 months after the 2013 ordeal, slam-dunking Justin, Elisha, and Courtney for being free and unbothered. In a blistering letter, she shared evidence and photos, refusing to wait for justice, vowing to revive public interest with or without law enforcement's backing. In 2016, journalists visited Justin's mom's house, meeting Elisha, Ayla's aunt. Queried about blood evidence, Elisha blamed Ayla's lactose intolerance, citing vomiting. However, internet research showed this was unlikely, as typical symptoms are gas, bloating, and diarrhea, not vomiting blood. In 2017, a judge granted Trista's request and formally declared Ayla legally deceased. The ruling stated that Ayla's death likely occurred on or around December 17, 2011, the day her father, Justin, reported her missing. With this ruling in place, Trista and her legal team pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin, alleging that his intentional and unlawful actions led to Ayla's death, and that he subjected her to pain, terror, and physical harm prior to her passing. Trista held a press conference, confronting her deceased daughter's father after he denied wrongdoing in a lawsuit. She questioned his conscience, saying she saw the truth in his eyes and believed he knew it was a problem. In 2023, a judge granted Trista's request to add Phoebe and Elisha as defendants in the wrongful death lawsuit. The three defendants now face civil charges for wrongful death, conscious pain and suffering, and unlawfully interfering with a deceased person's body. Additionally, Justin is charged with breaching his parental duty to care for a minor child. Trista and her lawyer knew they wouldn't get money from Justin. They wanted to uncover the truth about Ayla's disappearance. It was suspicious, with Justin driving to Portland and back, claiming to search for Ayla, but never contacting Trista or her family. He had bought a $25,000 life insurance policy for Ayla weeks before. It's bizarre that Justin stayed at a friend's house while detectives investigated Ayla's disappearance. This is especially surprising, given that Justin had barely been involved in his baby's life during the 9 months of pregnancy, and most of her life. Trista also shared that she received strange messages from Justin in the week after he took Ayla, in which he expressed fear that someone might kidnap or snatch her. He had made similar comments around December 11th, 6 days before her disappearance was reported. However, after Ayla went missing, those messages took on a threatening and confusing tone. Trista admitted that she had always been perplexed by their meaning. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Valerie Tiemann. Valerie Tiemann was born on December 31, 1981, in Salem, Virginia. Valerie Joy Harmon was the child of Sarah Jean Sampson Harmon and Jean Allen Harmon. She grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and graduated from Hampton Park Christian School in 2000. Valerie then earned her cosmetology degree from Bob Jones University. Known for her warm, friendly smile and outgoing personality, Valerie was passionate about drama and speech. She enjoyed music, playing the piano and flute. Using her cosmetology skills, Valerie worked in salons, spas, and pageants, helping others look and feel their best. Valerie met Matt through a mutual friend when she was 22. Despite their contrasting personalities, Valerie was outgoing and cheerful, while Matt was more withdrawn. They made it work. The couple got married in 2004 and initially lived harmoniously in Matt's small house after their honeymoon. However, Valerie's parents soon noticed changes in her behavior. Matt tightly controlled their finances, forcing Valerie to open a separate bank account to save personally. As time passed, Matt's behavior worsened, as he sought to control every aspect of Valerie's life and blamed her for all their problems. Valerie endured much emotional pain, but eventually reached her breaking point. After 10 years, she divorced Matt, seeking a fresh start. Luke Tiemann brought a fresh start to Valerie's life, helping her put her past problems behind her. With his 10-year Army background, including service in Iraq and Afghanistan, Valerie saw him as a reliable and loving partner. Her relatives noticed a significant change in her as she became cheerful and smiling once again, just like 10 years prior. The couple got married on June 6, 2014, and began living at Luke's parents' house in Fairfield, Maine, while Valerie's parents resided in South Carolina. After visiting her family in South Carolina, Luke and Valerie returned to Maine in August 2016. On August 24, 2016, Valerie's mother, Sarah Jean Harmon, had her last conversation with her daughter through text messages. Around that time, Luke had started chatting with a woman on Facebook and was seen with her by several people. On the night of August 24th, Luke and the woman were intimate, and it appears that Valerie discovered their infidelity that night. On August 25, 2016, Valerie called Luke 31 times within a 5-hour span. A mutual friend of the couple contacted Valerie via Messenger, informing her that Luke was involved with other women and claiming they were separated. Valerie responded with several messages, expressing her heartbreak and conveying that God had a plan, and that Luke would never find a better woman than her, and that he had lost her. On August 26, 2016, Luke Tiemann moved in with the woman he was having an affair with, claiming to her that his wife Valerie had left him for another man. Meanwhile, Valerie's parents, Sarah Jean and Alan Harmon, were growing concerned because Valerie, who had been calling them every week, had suddenly stopped responding to their calls and texts. After a week of trying to reach her, they decided to contact Luke, asking how he and Valerie were doing. The next day, Luke replied, saying they were fine and that he loved her very much. However, another 13 days went by with no word from Valerie, prompting her parents to reach out to Luke's father for help. To their shock, Luke's father told them that Valerie had been missing for about 2 weeks and that they had not seen her. He even asked what to do with her belongings. When Alan confronted Luke about why he hadn't told them about Valerie's disappearance, Luke claimed he was waiting for Valerie to contact her parents herself, as he didn't want to speak poorly of her. He repeated the story that Valerie had left him for another man, but her parents knew it was untrue. It was out of character for Valerie, and they were certain she would have reached out to them because she knew they would worry. On September 9, 2016, Alan filed a report with the Fairfield Police Department stating Valerie was missing. The detectives launched an investigation, which began with a visit to Luke Tiemann's parents, where Valerie had been living with her husband. During the visit, they spoke with Luke's mother, Laurel Tiemann, but she claimed to have no knowledge of their whereabouts. As a result, the detectives left without gaining any new information. Valerie's parents had always thought it was difficult for their daughter to live with Laurel, who they saw as overbearing. 2 weeks after Valerie's disappearance, Laurel packed all of her belongings into garbage bags. This action clearly reflected Laurel's attitude towards her daughter-in-law. She seemed unconcerned about Valerie's well-being and was primarily motivated by a desire to clear the house of her belongings. The police were searching for Luke Tiemann to ask him some questions, but he was nowhere to be found. They went to his home, but he wasn't there. And his parents claimed they didn't know his whereabouts. However, 5 days after Valerie's disappearance, Luke unexpectedly contacted the police himself, stating that he was aware they wanted to speak with him. During the conversation, the detectives asked him about Valerie and the last time he saw her. Luke's response was peculiar. He explained that, about 2 weeks prior, he and Valerie had stopped by the local Walmart to purchase some groceries. While he went inside the store, Valerie stayed in the car. When he finished shopping and returned to the vehicle, Valerie was gone. Luke claimed that he tried to reach her by calling and texting, offering to take her back. He also revealed that his marriage to Valerie was on the verge of collapse. According to him, Valerie had mentioned another man during a conversation, leading him to believe she was having an affair. Despite this, Luke didn't know the man's identity or address, and he assumed Valerie had left him for this unknown individual. Valerie's family, however, insisted she had never mentioned anyone else besides Luke Tiemann in her life. The police made a public appeal through the media, releasing a photo of Valerie and asking anyone who had seen her in the recent weeks to come forward with information for the detectives. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance from the Walmart parking lot, including her belongings being found in garbage bags, seemed suspicious. It was also unclear why Luke Tiemann, Valerie's husband, had made no effort to search for her, possibly due to being preoccupied with another woman. Investigators visited the Walmart where Luke and Valerie had been on the day of her disappearance, where they reviewed the surveillance footage. Despite searching for over an hour, they found no evidence of Luke, his red pickup truck, or Valerie on any of the recordings. This discovery revealed that Luke had lied to the police and that he was hiding something. The investigators decided to interview Luke in person, but they didn't disclose all the information they had obtained. They suspected that he might contradict himself or alter his story if he knew what they knew. Luke's open affair with Billie Joe Goodman didn't go unnoticed by anyone. While he admitted to cheating on Valerie, He claimed it was an attempt to heal from their recent breakup. Billie Joe, however, had a string of failed relationships behind her, but when she met Luke, she believed he was the one with whom she could build a stable future. This new development led investigators to a crucial question. Did Valerie pose a threat to Luke and Billie Joe's budding relationship? Was it possible that the couple wanted to start anew, and Valerie's presence was an obstacle they decided to eliminate to ensure their plans went undisrupted? The police interviewed Billie Joe, who claimed she thought Luke had divorced his wife. When questioned, she denied any knowledge of Valerie Tiemann's disappearance. Meanwhile, a local informant tipped off the police about a driver's license found in a parking lot near Billie Joe's home, and it belonged to Valerie. This discovery raised suspicions, as it seemed unlikely that Valerie would abandon her belongings and identification to run off with someone else. On September 19, 2016, Luke Tiemann gave an interview to News Center, Maine, 10 days after Valerie's father, Alan, had filed a missing persons report with the police. During the interview, Luke told reporters that he and Valerie had gone to Walmart, but Valerie was not in the car when he returned. At the time, he was unaware that the Walmart CCTV footage did not corroborate his account. Police dogs trained to detect human remains were brought in to search the last known place where Valerie lived. The search plan involved checking the house, the land, and the stream. After about 5 minutes, a police dog picked up a scent in the woods behind the Tiemann family house. An officer began digging the soil with his hands and found a shoe sticking out of the ground. Other officers, wearing gloves, joined in to help dig. They eventually uncovered a woman's body, wrapped in a blanket and buried with a collection of unusual items. These items included a bag of potato chips, a bottle of Gucci perfume, a package of sweet tarts, a flannel shirt, a mason jar, a handwritten note, and a wedding ring. The ring was discovered later when evidence was being prepared for trial. Sergeant Scott Bryant, chief of Maine's evidence response team, was processing the contents of the mason jar, which included dirt, flower stems, and twigs, when he heard a thud and found the ring. Although it was not specified who the ring belonged to, or whether it was a man's or woman's, Bryant noted that the ring was much larger than his own wedding ring. The body was transported to the forensic medical examiner's office for an autopsy and identification. Unfortunately, Sarah Jean and Alan Harmon received the devastating news that every parent fears the most. The body discovered behind the Tiemann family house was identified as their daughter, Valerie. Valerie lived in the house with Luke, as well as his parents and younger brother Sam. The detectives searched the barn and found landscaping tools that belonged to Sam, which were used to dig the burial site where Valerie's body was found. They also discovered a device related to illegal substance use. Further investigation revealed that Sam Tiemann had a history of using illegal substances, which Valerie had confided in her parents about during her visit to South Carolina. The police had to investigate whether Sam Tiemann was involved in Valerie's death. During a search of Luke's parents' bedroom, investigators discovered a .45 caliber handgun that Luke Tiemann had purchased in 2015. Despite this, Luke's parents claimed to have had no knowledge of Valerie's burial near their house, which seems unlikely. Around the time Valerie's body was found, investigators also discovered Luke with his new girlfriend, Billie Joe. Luke Tiemann was arrested and taken in for questioning. He told investigators that Valerie had died from an overdose on August 25th, about a month prior, due to her use of illegal substances. According to Luke, he didn't inform Valerie's parents about her death because he wanted to spare them the knowledge of her drug use. Instead of calling 911, he left her body in bed until evening, then wrapped her in a blanket, added a note, and buried her in the woods behind the house with the help of his brother Sam. According to Luke, Valerie did not have any physical injuries before she died. However, the autopsy results revealed that Luke was not telling the truth. Although Valerie's blood showed no traces of banned substances, it did contain prescription drugs. But that was not the most astonishing finding. Valerie died from 2 gunshot wounds, one to the head and the other to the neck. The ballistics examination indicated that the bullets removed from Valerie's body came from a .45 caliber handgun. Significantly, this handgun matched the one found by investigators in Luke's parents' bedroom during a search. Luke admitted to buying the gun about a year prior, claiming it was for his father. Despite this, he denied knowing that Valerie had been shot. Luke Tiemann, 32, has been charged with the murder of his 34-year-old wife, Valerie Tiemann. Although his parents and younger brother were investigated, no evidence was found to implicate them. Luke claimed that his brother, Sam, helped him bury Valerie's body, but the police found that Sam was not at home at the time, and it remains unclear whether Luke's parents were aware of or involved in Valerie's death. It is noteworthy that they did not report hearing 2 gunshots on April 2, 2018. The trial began in Somerset County Superior Court in Skowhegan, Maine, with opening statements marking the start of a 5-day trial. Luke pleaded not guilty, arguing that he had been framed. He claimed that he would not have left incriminating evidence, such as an engagement ring and a note, near the body. But forensic examinations linked all the items found with Valerie's body to Luke Tiemann. A computer forensics expert testified, revealing that Valerie's phone was last used on August 25, 2016, the day the police believe she died. The detective explained how tracking cell phone usage can help determine an individual's location at the time of a call. Valerie made 31 calls to Luke on the same day he allegedly spent time with his new girlfriend, Billie Joe. Luke only answered the last call, which lasted around 13 minutes. The police believe he was at home when the call ended. The morning after Valerie's disappearance, a woman sent a message to Valerie's phone, accusing Luke of cheating on her. This was the last time the woman was heard from. Luke's defense team questioned the authenticity of these phone records. In court, Luke's younger brother, Sam Tiemann, testified against him. Luke had told the police that Sam helped him bury Valerie's body, but Sam denied any involvement, claiming he was working 2 hours away at the time and had his work log as proof. Sam told the court that he confronted Luke after hearing he had implicated him, and Luke responded by saying, "What else do you do with a dead body?" The police continued to press Luke about who shot Valerie, even suggesting that his brother Sam or their parents might be involved. Luke insisted that they were incapable of such an act. The officers wondered if Luke might have blacked out due to his PTSD, which he had previously claimed would sometimes cause him to become enraged and forgetful afterwards. Several witnesses called by the prosecutor testified in court about the private lives of Luke and Valerie Tiemann. They gave detailed accounts of how the couple frequently used significant amounts of illegal drugs. Additionally, they stated that Luke had informed people he was getting a divorce around the same time Valerie went missing. Luke's former girlfriend, Jackie Spencer, revealed to the jury that she had a close relationship with the couple and had even served as the maid of honor at their wedding. She stated that she had personally witnessed Valerie and Luke using various illegal drugs together. Furthermore, she testified that Luke had begun sending her numerous text messages around the time Valerie vanished, suggesting that he may have been interested in pursuing a romantic relationship with her. The jury was shown evidence from the crime scene, which included a video that depicted the approximately 3-minute walk from where Valerie's body was discovered to the Tiemann's home. The video footage revealed an overgrown all-terrain vehicle trail winding through a thickly forested area, a common feature found behind many rural homes in Maine. The defense team, representing Luke, raised objections to certain pieces of evidence, including gardening tools found in a shed near the property and a .45 caliber handgun discovered in one of the rooms of the home. They contended that the prosecution had failed to establish ownership of these items, suggesting that someone else in the household may have had access to them. During the trial, Luke Tiemann acknowledged that he had changed his story multiple times, alleging that detectives had coerced him into providing false testimony. He insisted that he had no reason to kill his wife and that there was no DNA evidence connecting him to the crime scene. The prosecutors, however, argued that Tiemann was the only person who could have harmed Valerie, and that all the evidence pointed to his guilt. The jury took less than an hour to deliberate before finding Tiemann guilty. At the sentencing hearing, Valerie's mother expressed her grief and outrage, denouncing Tiemann as an evil-hearted man who still refused to accept responsibility for his actions and demanded a life sentence. In contrast, Tiemann's mother begged the court to consider her son's entire life and to balance justice with compassion. Ultimately, Tiemann received a 55-year prison sentence, which was longer than his family had hoped. Despite later changing his testimony again while incarcerated, this did not have a positive impact on his case. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of the Hawks couple. Thomas and Jackie Hawks set out on a journey that would lead them straight into the grasp of tragedy. Unaware, they made the decision to sell their prized possession, their luxurious yacht, which would plunge them into a dark abyss. Imagine the sun glistening on the calm waters, a final voyage on their treasured vessel, and a potential buyer about to finalize the deal. As the sails billowed in the wind and the waves murmured their secrets, the Hawks ventured into the unknown, oblivious that this very journey would become their eternal shroud. Thomas Hawks and his brother Jim Hawks grew up on a farm in the heart of California. They shared a passion for surfing the rolling waves and navigating the vast open sea. However, life's twists and turns saw Thomas answering the call of duty, trading the embrace of the ocean and joining the military. He even ventured into the harsh battlegrounds of the Vietnam War, leaving his mark as a veteran. Despite this, his resilience never wavered, and he transitioned into the realm of justice, becoming a dedicated probation officer. Meanwhile, Jim's path led him into the uniform of a police officer, eventually rising to the esteemed position of police chief. Service and duty ran deep in their veins. Thomas was a dedicated bodybuilder. He had sculpted his body, a testament to his unwavering commitment to physical strength. His impressive physique was a symbol of his indomitable will. Life took its course, and Thomas married, bringing 2 sons, Ryan and Matthew, into the world. However, like the changing tides, the journey of their relationship faced unexpected turns, and they ultimately ended up divorcing. Thomas found himself in Prescott, Arizona, starting a new chapter in his life. His sons followed, drawn to their father in this new land. Then, in an unexpected but positive twist of fate, Thomas crossed paths with Jackie. They fell in love, and their hearts entwined, sparking a love that burned brighter than the Arizona sun. However, Jackie carried scars not of the heart, but of life's cruelty, as a past accident had left her unable to bear children of her own. Yet, her love knew no bounds, as she embraced Thomas's sons as her own flesh and blood. This couple had always faced life's demands, with unwavering determination. They toiled ceaselessly, their dreams woven into their hearts. Their aspiration to own a vessel, a testament to their hard-earned rewards, became a reality as they bought themselves a 55-foot yacht. They named it Well-Deserved, a name their loved ones deemed as a fitting and well-deserved reward for their unyielding work ethic. They took the vessel to the next level by equipping it with the most advanced technology. With retirement's golden years ahead, Thomas and Jackie set sail along the picturesque West Coast. Mexico's exotic shores, California's rugged coastline, and Catalina Island's enchanting beauty became their playground for the following 2 years. They were without a doubt living the dream they had so ardently envisioned. Life being an ever-evolving story, new chapters beckoned. One of Thomas's sons began a family of his own, with the promise of a grandchild on the horizon. Anticipation filled their hearts, the prospect of becoming grandparents, a beacon of joy. Thomas and Jackie then considered the idea of returning to Arizona to be close to their expanding family. and so they made the difficult decision to part with their beloved boat. They decided to sell it in Newport Beach, California, little knowing that this decision would thrust them into the maze of fate, leading to a tragedy they could never have anticipated. The dreams they had so faithfully pursued would take an unexpected and heart-rending turn. In November 2004, they listed their well-deserved yacht for sale at $435,000 through an advertisement in a magazine, choosing to bypass the conventional broker route to save on hefty commissions. With the high price tag for their beloved yacht, which was valued near $500,000, they were confident that the vessel's well-maintained condition would attract eager buyers. But fate had other plans. The first person who responded to their advertisement was not who they had expected. The mysterious individual who reached out was named Skylar Dillion, and what happened next exceeded their expectations. Initially, they were doubtful when they met Dillion. Thomas, a former probation officer, couldn't help but wonder how someone so young had acquired so much wealth. Skylar's explanation, which included a previous career as a child actor, being part of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers cast, and appearing in commercials, had made him rich. Skylar Dillion made a great offer, a full cash offer, sweetened with an additional $15,000 for some personal items he wants to keep on the boat. To further reduce the Hawks' hesitation, he arrived at the meeting with his pregnant wife, Jennifer Henderson, and their young child. Their seemingly happy family had an effect, slowly melting away the Hawks' worries as trust gradually grew. However, under their friendly exterior, Skylar and Jennifer were hiding a treacherous deceit that would lead to serious consequences. The Hawks were unaware of this as they had developed a strong trust in Dillion. The sea trial, a normal part of boat sales, was set for November 15, 2004, and turned out to be a significant day. Shortly before the trial, on November 12, 2004, the Hawks went on a meaningful trip to Santa Catalina Island near the Los Angeles coast. It was a bittersweet occasion, celebrating the upcoming sale of their beloved boat and one final sale on it. Friends and family were told that a buyer had been found, and the sale was close. On November 15th, as the morning sun illuminated the scene, Skylar and his wife arrived with two men, one slender and the other muscular. The Hawks were surprised by the presence of these two individuals, sparking suspicions. However, Dillion quickly eased their concerns by stating that they were merely acquaintances. He clarified that the well-built man was his accountant. After these explanations, Jennifer and the child stayed behind, while the others boarded the boat and set off on their journey. They slowly navigated into the vast open waters, leaving their familiar world behind. Little did they know, this voyage would be their last, mysteriously marking the final time anyone would see them. As the sun set and darkness descended, Carter Ford, the port captain of the Lido Isle Yacht Club and a close friend of the Hawks, looked forward to their evening meeting with anticipation. Plans were in place and excitement filled the air. However, when night fell over Newport Harbor like a heavy blanket, an unsettling message disrupted the peace. Jackie called with troubling news that made Ford shiver. The Hawks were on a sea trial, which seemed routine, but something felt off. The buyer and his group had kept them out on the water longer than expected, leading to uncertainty. The Hawks promised to contact once they returned, and this was the last anyone heard from them. When the sun rose again, the yacht had returned to Newport Beach, but the couple was nowhere to be found. A puzzling mystery unfolded, as they seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Days passed with no word to their loved ones, their phones silent. To add to the mystery, Jackie's SUV was also missing, leading some to wonder if they had gone on a sudden road trip to enjoy their recent financial success, choosing to disconnect from the world as they celebrated. But the dark reality became clear. The Hawks were not on vacation. Something more sinister had happened to them, and it was only later that they realized this. A week passed, and the unusual silence from the Hawks sparked many questions and concerns. Their loved ones felt the weight of their absence, with a fear that something was wrong. The family turned to Carter Ford in desperation, asking him to go out to the well and investigate. As Ford boarded the boat, he felt a deep sense of concern. Everything seemed to be in disarray, with a lone white towel hanging ominously from one of the portholes. The family was disturbed by the strange scene and immediately took action by filing a missing persons report. Detectives were called to the scene. They proceeded cautiously, breaking the lock on the cabin door and entering. Inside the boat, there were no signs of violence, but a sinister presence seemed to be lurking in the shadows. Their attention was drawn to a white towel stained with fresh ink, hidden between the bed and the wall. It made them stop and think, prompting disturbing questions. A receipt nearby revealed a troubling list of items: bleach, cleaning supplies, heavy-duty trash bags, and Tums, an antacid. The detectives began to connect the pieces of this dark puzzle. The cleaning supplies seemed well suited for a murder, with the trash bags to dispose of evidence, bleach to clean away any traces, and Tums possibly used to calm a stomach unsettled by the horrific acts. The boat had secrets that scared everyone who entered. Investigators were determined to find out the truth about the yacht's buyers, Skylar and Jennifer. A surveillance team was quickly put together to follow them closely. Undercover officers followed the Dillians, observing them living their daily lives, seemingly unaffected by suspicion. They were regular volunteers at a local church, and Jennifer's work as a hairdresser presented no unusual facets. To the world, they appeared utterly ordinary, masking their true nature with chilling adeptness. As detectives delved deeper into their backgrounds, a grim portrait emerged. Skylar Dillian's history bore the stain of a prior conviction for burglary, landing him on probation. Financial scrutiny revealed that the couple was drowning in a staggering $87,000 worth of debt, a dire financial abyss. The investigators were puzzled by a question: how did the couple manage to buy a yacht when they were struggling financially? After looking into Skylar's claims of fame on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they found out he was just an uncredited extra in a few episodes. To add to the mystery, the couple was living in Jennifer's parents' garage. Their desire to own a yacht didn't match their financial situation, leaving the detectives confused. The more they investigated, the more confusing the situation became. Dillian was being questioned intensely, but he stuck to his story that he had bought the yacht legally. Surprisingly, he admitted that the money came from selling drugs. Things got even more intense when he revealed that he had handed over a briefcase full of cleaned money from Mexico, mostly in $100 bills, to Tom. Interestingly, Skylar said that the Hawks had asked him to help with setting up a bank account in Mexico, so they could start a new life there. He also mentioned that Tom and Jackie had given him power of attorney, allowing him to control their money and transfer it to Mexico. To strengthen his story, Skylar showed what seemed to be a real power of attorney document with signatures that looked real. Despite denying any role in their disappearance and suggesting the couple may have gone to Mexico, doubts remained. Cell phone records showed the Hawks' phones were near the Mexican border the day after the sea trial with Skylar. Frustrated detectives went back to square one and refocused on the Hawks family, prioritizing the safety of the couple above all else. They sought answers by going to the national news, where a family member appeared on camera asking for help in finding the missing couple and their car. The mystery only grew deeper, capturing the world's attention with its twists and turns. An American citizen in Mexico called in, sparking action in the investigation. He had seen the car they were looking for on the news, and it was right in front of him. Authorities went to a house near Ensenada in Mexico and found the Hawks' car. Despite the Hawks being missing for over a month and the fear of something bad happening, there was hope that this could be them. There was a glimmer of optimism. Maybe this was the breakthrough they needed. A Mexican federal agent knocked on the door, leading the way. The names Skylar Dillian and Jennifer came up in the Spanish conversation. The man at the door had a chilling connection. He was an old surfing buddy of Skylar. He casually mentioned that Skylar had given him the car, and then Jennifer, his pregnant wife, had driven him back to the US. The detectives quickly collected samples from inside the car and found Skylar's DNA on a heater knob, a significant piece of evidence. This discovery led to suspicions of foul play. The investigators believed that Skylar and Jennifer may have vital information or knowledge of the events, but concrete proof was still needed. A new development occurred when the detectives looked into a suspicious power of attorney. Theory that Tom and Jackie allowed strangers access to their accounts raised concerns. However, the notary, Kathleen Harris, supported Skylar's story, claiming she had witnessed the Hawks signing the papers and confirming their identities with fingerprints. While this aligned with Skylar's account, the detectives decided to investigate further. They asked Harris to describe Tom and Jackie Hawks. While she accurately described Tom, her portrayal of Jackie raised suspicion. She described Jackie as having brown curly hair, when in reality, she had chopped her long curly locks and had a spiked blonde hairstyle. Was this confusion or a sinister cover-up? The power of attorney had fingerprints that matched perfectly and seemed to have legitimate signatures. Despite this, there was still a sense of worry. The case was given to the FBI to ease doubts, and the world's best handwriting analysts were brought in. Their discoveries were surprising. Tom's signature was genuine, as was Jackie's. However, there was an oddity in Jackie's signature that left investigators puzzled and struggling to solve the mystery. Armed with the unsettling revelation, the investigators received a tip that Skylar was going to flee. He had asked his probation officer for permission to leave the country, which helped the quick-thinking detectives quickly catch him for money laundering, the crime he had confessed to earlier. Investigators arrived at the garage apartment where Jennifer's parents resided and found a collection of personal items belonging to Tom and Jackie, such as their camera and driver's licenses. Upon inspecting Jackie's driver's license photo, they were surprised to see a striking resemblance to the notary's description, raising further suspicions about her involvement and the legitimacy of her actions. The investigation took a darker turn, shedding light on the unsettling idea that more people may be involved in this mysterious disappearance than previously thought. As the lies began to unravel, it exposed an intricate web of mysteries and secrets waiting to be revealed. In the garage, investigators found a business card belonging to an LAPD detective who worked with Interpol. They contacted the Interpol agent to discuss their investigation into Skylar's possible involvement in the Hawks' disappearance. The Interpol agent then shared that he had encountered Skylar a year earlier during a murder investigation in Mexico involving an American citizen. This connection raised the possibility that Skylar might have been involved in both cases. The main challenge was to find evidence. Detectives found something strange on the yacht. In photos, it had 2 anchors, but in reality, only one. Their suspicions grew as they realized the discrepancy. A chilling theory started to form. Detectives linked anchor absence on yacht to couple's disappearance, due to Skylar's ruse concealing sinister plot to steal prized possession. Needed undeniable proof. The net was tightening. Jennifer's actions revealed her involvement in the plot. Her effort to drain Hawks' account was evidence of her awareness of the situation, despite not being on the boat. But at a crucial moment, detectives identified a name in the power of attorney papers, a name that would shift the course in solving this puzzling case. The name belonged to a man who had witnessed the significant transaction, a man named Alonso. Alonso, who was only 19 at the time, resided with his parents and worked as a prison guard. A bond had developed between him and Dillian, while the latter was imprisoned for theft. Skylar had convinced Alonso to accompany him to the meetings. He was the slim man who had gone with him on the sea trial. Offering leniency in his punishment, they made an agreement with Alonso, pushing him to share his perspective and expose the chilling truth about the Hawks' destiny. As the tape recorder started playing, Alonso began to tell a frightening story. He revealed details about a man named John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was introduced as an accountant by Schuyler. However, Kennedy was not an ordinary man. He was actually a notorious gang member and former convict known as John F. Kennedy. Alonzo explained how they had planned a dangerous scheme that would bring disaster to the Hawks. Their evil plan involved kidnapping a couple and taking them out to sea to throw them overboard. The frightening story began when John F. Kennedy pretended to be seasick and went below deck. Thomas, concerned for him, went down to check on him and fell into their trap. Schuyler followed, and together they attacked Thomas. Amidst the chaos, Jackie asked worried questions. Alonzo grabbed her, used a taser to immobilize her, handcuffed her, and took her to another part of the boat. Both Thomas and Jackie found themselves helpless, with their eyes and mouths taped shut. In those harrowing moments, as Jackie struggled to scream through her gag with tears of desperation flowing, Thomas offered a small gesture of solace. Handcuffed together, he tenderly stroked her hand with his fingers, a silent attempt to comfort her in the face of the grim fate that awaited them in the merciless hands of their captors. The grim saga continued as they were taken into the kitchen area, where the power of attorney awaited their reluctant signatures. The chilling ultimatum hung in the air like a death knell: cooperate, and perhaps they would be spared, or resist, and death would be their fate. The boat steered into the haunting depths of the ocean near Catalina Island, a place once filled with cherished memories for Tom and Jackie. On the deck of the vessel, they were bound together with a rope, a ghastly prelude to the impending horror. Dillian then disengaged one of the anchors from the boat's bow as he dragged the chain along, the dreadful sound echoing in their ears. They had heard that sound countless times before, but this time, it signaled their inexorable doom. Jackie's pleas for her life were heartbreaking, as she yearned to see her grandchild and believed she was too young to die. Tom assured her they would be together as they faced the cruel reality, being cast overboard into the Pacific Ocean. They were pushed from their vessel, dragged down by the anchor, disappearing into the depths. Unfortunately, their bodies were never found, shrouding their fate in mystery. After completing their evil deed, Schuyler began a cruel mission to eliminate any evidence of the Hawks' presence. He collected their precious belongings, including photographs, and heartlessly threw them into the deep ocean, where their memories faded away, abandoned without any regret. With all traces of the couple gone, Dillian and John F. Kennedy tried to return to a sense of normalcy as they sailed back to Newport Harbor, relaxing and fishing as if the terrifying recent events were just a disturbing illusion. Justice caught up with Schuyler, Dillian, John F. Kennedy, and Alonzo McChain as they faced 2 counts of first-degree murder. Jennifer Henderson defended her husband's innocence while facing her own reckoning as she too was charged with 2 counts of murder. Her involvement in the gruesome act was revealed, laying bare her complicity. The chilling murders were driven by a strong desire for money. Myron Gardner, an ex-convict and former gang member, played a key role in connecting Dillian with John F. Kennedy, despite not actively participating in the crime. Gardner faced charges of involuntary manslaughter for his part in these events. Justice was served when different juries found them all guilty. Jennifer Henderson was sentenced to 2 life terms in October 2007, without the chance of parole. John Fitzgerald Kennedy received a death sentence on May 1, 2009, and was placed on death row in San Quentin State Prison. Alonzo McChain testified against the others, pleaded guilty, and received a lighter sentence on June 15, 2009, 20 years and 4 months in prison, with the chance of parole in September 2021. In March 2009, Myron Gardner's life changed after spending 4 years in prison. He decided to plead guilty to being an accessory after the crime, which led to the dismissal of the murder charges against him. Meanwhile, Schuyler Dillian, also in jail, faced more accusations. He was said to have asked another inmate to carry out a dark plan against his own family members. Things took a darker turn when Dillian was also implicated in the murder of an American citizen named John Jarvie, who was killed in Mexico in 2003. Dillian's cousin and father, who were connected to the Jarvie murder, were considered crucial witnesses in both murder cases. On September 22nd, jury selection began for the trial of Skylar Dillian. Dillian was tried for the murders of Thomas and Jackie Hawkes, as well as John Jarvie. The verdict was given on April 10, 2009, with Dillian receiving a death sentence from Judge Frank Faisal in Orange County Superior Court. He was sent to death row at San Quentin State Prison. Before Skylar Dillian was sent to prison, a troubling discovery was made. While incarcerated on March 13, 2008, he performed a disturbing act by partially cutting his own male private part with a razor blade as he wished to remove it. After receiving immediate medical attention, he was taken back to his cell the next day. In an interview, Dillian admitted that his reason for this extreme self-injury was a strong desire to transition to a woman. He had already changed his name from John Julius Jacobson to Skylar Dillian, choosing a gender-neutral name to represent his identity. Defense lawyers claimed that Dillian's need for money to pay for sex reassignment surgery was the hidden reason for the murders of the Hawks. However, it is important to understand that this motive does not justify the terrible crimes he committed. In 2019, Dillian's gender was legally changed to female, and she is now known as Skylar Preciosa Dillian. The Hawks family holds dear the lasting memory of Thomas and Jackie, always engraved in their hearts. These lively individuals, recognized for their adventurous nature, embodied goodness and genuineness. Their destiny took a harsh turn, and even though they have passed away, their spirits persist, shining a timeless light on our recollections. May they rest in eternal peace in paradise. In 2013, Jessica Harringer, a 25-year-old woman, disappeared under circumstances from her workplace. The search for her kidnapper spanned several years, during which numerous other women were affected. When the authorities finally apprehended the culprit by chance, they uncovered deeply disturbing details about him. Jessica Harringer was born on July 16, 1987, and resided in Norton Shores, Michigan. She grew up in a modest family with a sister. At 22, Jessica became a mother to a son named Zine, fathered by her long-term partner Dakota Quayle Dyer. They were still together in 2013, living in a leased home. At the age of 25, Jessica worked at an Exxon gas station in Norton Shores, located near Lake Michigan. Known for her warm and friendly nature as a manager, she often received praise from customers. To support her cherished 3-year-old son, she frequently took on extra hours. Jessica's diary highlighted her ambitions to learn and advance. She aspired to pursue college studies in accounting, but financial constraints hindered this goal. Dakota was unable to fully support their family, leading to frequent disputes and turmoil in their relationship. The couple was engaged, yet their marriage faced repeated delays due to various factors. On the evening of April 26, 2013, Jessica Harringer was carrying out her regular duties at the Exxon gas station. Her day began with a visit to a nearby store around 3 p.m., followed by a drive to her workplace. She arrived at the gas station around 4:35 p.m., parked her car and started her night shift, which was supposed to end at 11:30 p.m. Jessica was the sole employee on duty that night. At 11:14 p.m., a customer called emergency services reporting his experience at the Exxon station. He had entered the store to pay for his gas in cash but found it unattended. He informed the dispatcher, "I'm not sure what's going on, but there's no one at the station. The door is open and unlocked. Lights are still on, but there's no one to take my payment. There are just my car and another vehicle outside. Why isn't anyone here? It looks very odd." The police reached the Exxon gas station within 10 minutes of the 911 call. During their inspection of the premises, both inside and outside, they found no evidence of a struggle. Everything seemed orderly. Jessica's coat was in the back room, along with her purse containing $400, car and house keys. A solitary drop of blood later identified as Jessica's, was discovered near the storage area's back door. Additionally, a cap from a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol's laser sight and 2 batteries, likely for a watch, were found on the floor. The gas station's cash register remained undisturbed with all the money intact. The last recorded transaction was at 10:52 p.m. for a lighter. The facility lacked interior surveillance cameras. Positioned next to the cash register was Jessica's pack of cigarettes, suggesting she had briefly left her station with the intention of returning soon. Her locked car was parked outside, but Jessica was nowhere to be seen. She had inexplicably disappeared. Upon discovering the station unattended, police reached out to the gas station's owner, informing them of the situation. The owner subsequently contacted another manager living close by, requesting her to secure the premises. Additionally, the police notified Jessica's family of her disappearance. Her parents sought clues to her whereabouts and called her friends. One friend recalled being at the gas station between 8 and 9 p.m. that day, noting that all appeared normal then. Shortly after, a fellow employee arrived to lock up the station. This colleague recounted that around 11 p.m., she and her boyfriend had driven by the station on a motorcycle. They spotted a silver Chrysler Town & Country minivan parked near the rear service door with its back door open. Suspecting Jessica might be involved in theft from the station, they paused to observe further developments. The manager observed a young man with disheveled wavy hair near the minivan, dressed in an orange sweatshirt. She saw him repeatedly open and close the vehicle's rear door before he finally drove off. Police reviewing surveillance footage from surrounding buildings located a video showing a silver Chrysler passing by Exxon gas station at 11:02 p.m. A store employee nearby also spoke to the police, mentioning that he had seen the man in the minivan conversing with Jessica Christian. The employee initially thought the stranger was merely flirting with Jessica, given her attractiveness. He noted Jessica standing outside, while the man questioned why she wasn't inside. Both Christian and Jessica's colleague, who had spotted the man by the minivan, contributed to creating a composite sketch of the unidentified individual. He was depicted as a light-complexioned young male with dark wavy hair, a stocky build, and approximately 1.82 meters in height. The sketch was released 3 days following Jessica's disappearance. Despite numerous calls received by police in response, no significant leads emerged from the information provided. The prevalence of the silver Chrysler minivan in the United States posed a considerable obstacle in the investigation. In Michigan alone, there were approximately 15,000 vehicles of this kind registered. Identifying the specific driver of the minivan linked to Jessica Hinger's disappearance became a daunting challenge given the vast number of identical models. Initially, Jessica's boyfriend Dakota Quayle D. was a suspect in her disappearance. He acknowledged their frequent arguments, but denied ever physically harming her. Dakota actively cooperated with the investigation, informing police that he was at home with their 3-year-old son on the night Jessica vanished. Without access to a car, he couldn't have traveled to her workplace, and his phone records, once verified by detectives, confirmed his presence at home that evening. This led to his exclusion from the suspect list. The investigation revealed that Jessica had numerous admirers due to her amiable and outgoing personality, which sometimes led to misunderstandings. One such admirer was Jess Ammerman, a 37-year-old married plumber. He visited Jessica at the gas station around 9:30 p.m. on the day she disappeared and confessed his love and willingness to divorce his wife for her. However, Jessica rebuffed his advances. Jess then left the station and called his wife. They spoke for about 50 minutes before he returned home. Following his interrogation, a polygraph test, and an interview with his wife, Jess Ammerman was also eliminated as a suspect. Rob Fallett, the brother of the Exxon gas station's manager, subsequently emerged as another individual involved in this case, though context-wise specifics about Rob's involvement were not provided. Identified as the next suspect, he mentioned visiting the gas station around 9 p.m. on the day Jessica disappeared. Upon greeting her, he He noticed she seemed downcast. Asking about her mood, Jessica confided in having family troubles. Rob suggested she could stay with him, but she declined. After a short while at the station and making a purchase, Rob left for a night fishing trip at the lake. Detectives checked Rob's phone records for that evening, which corroborated his account of leaving the gas station for fishing. Consequently, Rob Fillet was eliminated from the suspect list. Search and rescue operations for Jessica Heeringer were launched using helicopters, expertly trained canines, and extensive searches of residential and commercial properties, woods, and Lake Michigan. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no leads were found, leading to an impasse in the case. Nearly a year later, in February 2014, a similar event occurred in Michigan. A small blonde, bespectacled woman was assaulted by a man while returning home late at night. She was kidnapped, taken to his apartment, and attacked. Despite threats to her life, she was released after several hours. The perpetrator was identified as 42-year-old Brad Allen Mason. Mason was swiftly located, but resisted arrest by brandishing a fake firearm at police officers, resulting in his fatal shooting. Mason had a history of criminal activity, including a 2004 kidnapping conviction and a 2011 arrest for indecent exposure. In 2014, he resided in a dormitory opposite the Exxon gas station where Jessica worked. However, investigators found no evidence linking Mason to Jessica's disappearance. 2 years after Jessica Heeringer's disappearance, in 2016, another incident involving a young woman occurred late at night. Returning from a party at a friend's house, she became disoriented on a dark street. A man in a silver minivan approached her asking if she was okay and offering her a ride. She refused, but requested to use his phone instead. The man consented, but only if she entered the minivan. Once inside, he locked the door and revealed his phone battery was dead, then brandished a gun, instructing her to stay silent. These cases highlight ongoing challenges faced by law enforcement in solving abduction instances, despite rigorous investigative efforts and community cooperation. He then began driving, feeling sick and nauseated. The woman requested him to lower the window. Seizing the opportunity, she leaped out of the moving vehicle through the window and fled to a nearby house. The man sped away. The victim immediately contacted the police and described kidnapper. Through surveillance footage, the police managed to trace the license plate of the silver Chrysler Town & Country. They identified the driver as 46-year-old Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey Willis, a factory laborer, led a secluded, modest life and had no prior legal issues. When located in his minivan, police searched and found a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol. The gun was traced back to a colleague of Jeff, who had reported her laser-sighted gun stolen some time ago. Willis was arrested and detained. A search of his residence uncovered a box filled with various BDSM paraphernalia, including handcuffs, chains, ropes, gags, a vibrator, a video camera, and a bullet matching a Walther P22. The box also contained insulin syringes with an unidentified liquid, sedatives, Viagra, lubricant, disposable gloves, and a diagram of a woman's anatomy with marked injection sites. On his computer were numerous videos depicting appalling kidnapping scenes with young women as victims. A hidden hard drive in a ventilation duct contained footage Willis had recorded of his female neighbors swimming without their knowledge. A folder titled Victims on the computer held 2 subfolders, one named for the missing Jessica Heeringer and another for a murdered woman named Rebecca. Rebecca Bletch, aged 36, was tragically murdered on June 29, 2014, roughly a year after Jessica Heeringer vanished in an area just 20 minutes from where Jessica worked at the Exxon gas station. Rebecca went out for an evening run, but never made it back home. She was found by neighbors lying on the road with her clothing disheveled, initially leading to the belief that she was struck by a car, although unconscious. Rebecca still had a pulse when discovered. Emergency services were called, but she succumbed to her injuries before they could save her. Autopsy reports revealed she died from 3 gunshot wounds to her back and head, with multiple bruises on her wrists and legs. At the time of her death, the perpetrator remained at large. However, 2 years after Jeffrey Willis's arrest, new evidence linked Rebecca's murder to a pistol found in Willis's minivan. Willis denied any involvement, but prosecutors theorized that he had attempted to abduct Rebecca and bring her to his home. When Rebecca resisted, Willis reportedly shot her and fled. Forensic analysis later discovered Rebecca's DNA on a glove recovered from Willis's residence. Jeffrey Willis was convicted of Rebecca Bletch's murder and received a life sentence. While serving his sentence, he faced additional charges related to the kidnapping of Jessica Heeringer. Despite consistently denying any involvement in Jessica's disappearance, phone records showed that on the night she vanished, he was present at the Exxon gas station where she was last seen. Subsequently, he traveled to his deceased grandfather's house, which is roughly 13 minutes from the station. Upon arriving at his grandfather's residence, police encountered a heavily secured front door. Forced entry revealed an assortment of cleaning products, powders, and bleaches in the basement. The manufacturing dates on these items aligned with early 2013, matching the time frame of Jessica's disappearance. Colleagues recalled that Jeffrey Willis was notably absent on April 27, 2013, the day following Jessica Heeringer's disappearance. When he returned to work a few days later, he had conspicuous deep scratches on his face and hands, raising further suspicions among those who knew him. A woman who visited the gas station on April 25th, the day before Jessica's disappearance, later contacted police. She arrived late in the evening and expressed concern about being there alone at such an hour to Jessica herself. Jessica nodded in acknowledgement, appearing anxious and somewhat scared. At that moment, an unknown man inside the station reassured the visitor by saying, "Don't worry, she has customers who look after her." He left the premises. The concerned visitor, still worried about Jessica's safety, stayed in her car outside until Jessica finished her shift and headed home. Tragically, Jessica disappeared the following day in 2016. The witness from the gas station positively identified Jeffrey Willis, recalling seeing him there. Investigators learned that Willis had frequented the Exxon gas station, interacting with Jessica Heeringer on at least 15 occasions. Concurrently, 48-year-old Kevin Bloom, Willis's cousin and a prison guard, was taken into custody. Kevin's inconsistent statements during interrogation eventually led to a confession. He disclosed information about Rebecca Bletch's death that hadn't been publicly known. Kevin also confessed to assisting Jeffrey in concealing Jessica's body. He described how on April 27th, the day after Jessica's abduction, Jeffrey invited him over for a party at his house. Upon arriving at his late grandfather's residence, Kevin saw Jessica for the first time lying on the floor, bound and lifeless. The cousins wrapped her body in a sheet, transported it in a car to a forest where Jeffrey had pre-dug a grave and buried her. They then returned home. When Kevin Bloom led the police to the forest to identify the burial site of Jessica Heeringer's body, he spent a considerable amount of time wandering through the area. Despite his efforts, he was unable to pinpoint the precise location where they had buried the body. The trial of Jeffrey Willis commenced despite Jessica Heeringer's body not being found either alive or deceased. The prosecution presented substantial evidence to charge Willis with her kidnapping and murder. Their case posited that Willis had been stalking Jessica for an extended period. On the night of April 26, 2013, he allegedly parked his vehicle near the service entrance of the gas station. Entering the premises, he is said to have struck Jessica on the head with his gun. During this assault, it's reported that the cover of the gun's laser sight fell off, and Jessica's blood was spilled on the floor. Willis then purportedly dragged Jessica out through the service exit and placed her in the back seat of his car. He transported her to his late grandfather's house, where he committed his most horrific acts. Forensic computer analysis revealed that Jeffrey Willis stored photographs and news articles about the search for Jessica on his computer. Following the investigation's progress, it was discovered Willis used a password displayed on the screen consisting of Jessica's initials and the date April 27, 2013, presumed to be the day she died. Willis consistently denied his guilt, insisting he was at home on the night of her kidnapping. His lawyers argued that there was no direct evidence linking him to the case. No DNA belonging to Jessica was found in Willis's house or car. The defense team suggested that her disappearance might be linked to illegal drug trafficking, since Dakota had mentioned Jessica developed a serious substance abuse problem. Despite these arguments, Jeffrey Willis was convicted of murdering Jessica Heeringer and received a life sentence without parole. Throughout the trial, he displayed neither remorse nor empathy. His cousin, Kevin Bloom, was found guilty of assisting in disposing of Jessica's body. Kevin received a sentence of 2 years in prison and 5 years probation. Suspension from his role in the prison system was yet another blow to Jeffrey Willis. Years after his conviction, the narrative around him took a startling twist. He became a suspect in an older, unresolved case. On October 17, 1996, in Fruitport, Michigan, Angela Thorburg, a young woman, was found dead. Her remained at large. Ed Willis, who graduated from the same high school as Angela in 1988, found himself linked to her 1996 murder. In that year, 28-year-old Willis worked as a janitor at his alma mater. Concerns were raised when the principal noticed his excessive time spent in the computer lab during work hours. A check on his computer activities was initiated by the principal. Although the findings remain undisclosed, Willis was asked to resign immediately following the review. The investigation into Angela's murder continues to be shrouded in secrecy. A decade has passed since Jessica Heeringer's disappearance, and her remains are still undiscovered. This tragedy sparked a legal battle over the custody of her son Zan between Jessica's sister and Dakota, her partner. Ultimately, Jessica's biological family is raising Zan. In addition to custody disputes, Jessica's parents have been key advocates for legislative changes following their daughter's disappearance. Their efforts led to the enactment of a law mandating gas stations operating at night to install surveillance cameras. The goal is to prevent similar incidents in the future. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. According to statistics, approximately 30% of violent crimes committed around the world remain unsolved, despite the rapid development of technology and techniques, as well as the creation of extensive DNA databases. As a rule, most of these crimes are solved on hot tracks, but there are cases when the investigation lasts for years or even decades before the perpetrator is punished. But the Ellen Ray Greenberg case, which we will look at in this video, is interesting in that for many years of investigation, it has hardly moved forward. The case has been investigated with numerous irregularities, and over time, there are more questions than answers. The brutal murder of a young woman to this day remains a mystery, and what is remarkable is that the investigation is trying hard to prove that the cheerful Ellen, who was enthusiastically preparing for her own wedding, suddenly decided to leave her life. But let's try to understand everything in order. Who is Ellen Ray Greenberg? Ellen was born in New York in June 1993 in the family of Sama and George Greenberg. She was the only child of her parents, growing up in love and care. During high school, the girl was actively engaged in team sports and even gave hope as a promising athlete. She was an active, restless, and sociable child, but at the same time studied well, showing a special interest in the humanities. After graduating from high school, Ellen became a student at Pennsylvania State University, where she received a degree in public relations. But having started working on a specialty, Greenberg realized that this is not what she would like to devote her life to. Parallel to work, the girl enrolled in the correspondence department of the Pedagogical Institute. A few years later, she brilliantly defended her diploma and moved to Philadelphia, where she was hired to work in one of the local schools as a junior high school teacher. According to relatives, Ellen's life was going great. She was full of enthusiasm, made big plans for the future, and simply adored her work and small students. At the same time, Ellen met a boy with whom she had a torrid affair, and soon they began to prepare for their wedding. The girl's favorite was a young man named Samuel, or just Sam, Goldberg. He was from a fairly wealthy and well-known family in the city. His parents owned their own large business, and his uncle had a reputation as one of the best lawyers in the state. The young men met in 2009 at a party, thanks to their mutual acquaintances, and immediately liked each other. The friendly interaction quickly turned into a rapidly developing romantic relationship, and soon they decided to move in together and live together. On the eve of 2011, Sam made his beloved a proposal, which was the best gift for the new year. He gave her a beautiful diamond ring, and the couple began to prepare for the upcoming wedding, which was scheduled for the spring of the same year. Family members of both young people took the news with joy, and it seemed that the happiness of lovers can no longer interfere with anything. Ellen plunged headlong into the pleasant troubles associated with the wedding, making lists of guests and sending them invitations, choosing a venue and elements of decor for the event, trying on wedding dresses, trying to create their ideal image, and planning a honeymoon. It is noteworthy that almost all these issues the bride was engaged in independently, and the groom did not visibly participate in the process. But loved ones did not attach much importance to this, and Helen never complained. True, there were some oddities, to which everyone paid attention only after the tragedy occurred. In January 2011, the weather in the city was very snowy and frosty. On the 26th, Alan went to work at school as usual, but close to noon there was a strong wind and a blizzard, so classes were canceled and students and teachers were sent home. Ellen returned to the apartment she and Sam shared. It was in a cozy apartment complex located in one of the quiet areas of the city. Soon Sam returned home as well. According to some reports, the couple that day quarreled, which was mentioned in passing, and Sam himself, but later he began to deny it. Close to 5 p.m., Sam decided to go to the gym located in the same apartment complex. He was gone for less than 1 hour, but when he returned, he could not get into the apartment because the door was locked from the inside. Sam first knocked loudly and insistently, then began calling his fiancée by name, which attracted the attention of neighbors, and then began calling her on the phone and sending messages. No one responded to his yelling, knocking, and calling, but it was heard that the phone was inside the apartment. Sam then went to the first floor of the building to the security guard to ask for help. Samuel explained the situation to him and asked if it was possible to open the front door, to which the guard replied that this was beyond his authority and that he could not leave his post by instruction. Then Sam went back up to his floor and decided to act on his own. He slammed his shoulder into the door, and the first time he did it, he managed to break the latch. It was quiet inside. Ellen's call was never answered, and when he entered the kitchen, he saw a gruesome sight. His fiancée was sitting on the floor, leaning back against the cabinet door, her body slashed with a knife and her clothes stained with blood. Sam immediately started calling emergency services, describing the situation, and when asked to check if the girl had a pulse, he acted strangely, asking several times if he really needed to do that. Then there was silence, and afterwards Sam suddenly stated that there was a knife sticking out in his fiancée's chest, which, allegedly, he had not noticed before. He also added that Ellen was obviously already dead. The police officers who arrived on the call were quite surprised, and noted that they had never seen such a thing in their many years of practice. The door was indeed locked from the inside with a latch, which Sam had subsequently knocked off with his shoulder. There were no signs of forced entry or the presence of intruders in the room. Nothing had been stolen from the apartment. All valuables and money were still there. Nothing had been searched or touched. But the most interesting thing began when the body of the dead girl was examined. No signs of struggle or attempts to defend herself were found, as if everything happened suddenly, and the victim simply did not have time to react. On her body counted about 24 stab wounds of varying depth, and the final blow came to the heart, and it took Ellen's life. We will return to the blatant negligence with which the crime scene and the body of the deceased were examined a little later. This negligence allowed a lot of evidence to be missed and left a possible perpetrator at large. But even more strange was the behavior of the police, who even before the medical examination thought that Ellen had done this to herself. Panic attacks, visits to a psychologist, and prescription drugs. In favor of the version of voluntary departure from life was the fact that Ellen, since some time, began to suffer from anxiety disorder and panic attacks arising on its background. The situation was so serious that Ellen even sought help from a psychologist. Close, she tried not to complain, so as not to worry them, and relatives in turn associated changes in Ellen's behavior with stress and excitement before the wedding. However, the specialist who worked with Ellen prescribed her 2 medications, which she took regularly to combat her anxiety. As the psychologist himself would later report, neither of these drugs, neither together nor separately, could in any way aggravate Ellen's mental state and cause thoughts of death. The specialist also noted that despite her anxiety, the patient never had such thoughts. In addition, Ellen's friends and colleagues noticed that after she and Sam started living together, her behavior began to change. In addition to becoming anxious and restless, Ellen almost stopped making any decisions on her own. In every situation, Ellen would say that she needed to discuss it with her fiancé, that she couldn't give an answer without consulting him. Similar oddities noticed, and parents of the deceased, but every time her daughter tried to complain to them about her difficult emotional state, she added that Sam had nothing to do with it. And 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother that she wanted to quit school, drop everything, and return to her parents' house. Her mother was very surprised at her daughter's words, but assured her that she could return home at any time, and her parents would accept her without question. However, Ellen never brought up the subject again. Later, it was hypothesized that after the couple moved in together, Sam began to show violence towards his fiancée, and she was scared, afraid to tell anyone about it. The psychologist Ellen consulted did not confirm or deny this version, but noted that Ellen had difficulty articulating and expressing what she was experiencing and what was bothering her. It was as if she wanted to share something important, but the fear was stronger than that. Oddities and inconsistencies in the case. This unusual case from the very beginning raised a lot of questions, but most interestingly, no one even tried to find answers to them. The carelessness with which the examination of the crime scene and the body was conducted, as well as the expertise, is simply astounding. Many circumstances, facts, and evidence were simply ignored and irretrievably lost, and without them it was impossible to restore the full picture of the incident. To begin with, on the hands of the victim, was not found typical for self-defense injuries, which means that the girl was not trying to defend herself. But at the same time, on her body revealed numerous hematomas, which, judging by the degree of healing she received several weeks ago, the fiancé explained that these are most likely the consequences from playing team sports. However, Ellen's parents assured that their daughter had not visited gyms and playgrounds for a very long time because of the workload at work, as well as active preparations for the wedding. No suicide message was found. Ellen looked like a victim of a brutal massacre, but despite this, almost immediately a version of voluntary departure from life was voiced. Moreover, there were food, spices, and a cutting board on the table in the kitchen. So, according to the logic of the investigators, Ellen started to cook dinner, but suddenly changed her mind and decided to cut herself to death with a knife. Further, as I have already noted, on the body of the victim counted 24 penetrating wounds of varying depth, and forensic examination showed that 10 of them were inflicted from the back, so if the girl was attacked from behind, and some of them were serious enough, and if they did not kill Ellen immediately, then certainly deprived her of the ability to move and resist. It is simply impossible to inflict such injuries on oneself, and then to stick a knife into one's heart to the hilt, and this caused medical experts to doubt the originally announced cause of death. However, despite this conclusion, the investigation continued to insist on the previous version and refused to initiate criminal proceedings. The main argument was the absence of traces of strangers in the apartment, as well as the absence of signs of self-defense. By the way, there were also some doubts about the possibility of penetration into the apartment, because the latch on the inner part of the door was also very peculiar. It could be closed from the outside, but not completely. If the latch had been closed from the inside all the way, it would have been impossible to break it out with a single blow of the shoulder without damaging the doorway. But, judging by the nature of the damage, it was only partially closed, and it could have been done from outside the door. Although the victim's spouse or partner is usually the prime suspect in such cases, Sam has always remained above suspicion. No charges were brought against him, and it was only on the day of the incident that he was interviewed at the station in the presence of his uncle, who, as already mentioned, was a well-known and influential lawyer. Moreover, The whole picture and sequence of events of that day was reconstructed only according to the words of Sam Goldberg, who at times was confused in his own testimony, but wrote everything off as stress. Neighbors confirmed only that they heard the knocking and screaming of a guy who could not get into the apartment and called his fiancée, but that's all. Sam further claimed during his testimony that he went to the security guard for help, and the guard went upstairs with him and saw him kicking down the door. But the guard denied this information, saying that he had not left his post. Strangely enough, but the investigation did not return to this issue, considering this detail irrelevant. A recording from only one surveillance camera leading to the gym was also checked. It shows Sam walking towards the gym and then walking back. But in the interval between these two events, he could well have gone out through another passage and then returned to the gym in the same way. However, his alibi was not checked, and possible witnesses who could confirm that he had been working out or deny it were not even looked for. Sam did not call the police until an hour later, after he found the door locked and his fiancée unresponsive to knocking and shouting. In addition, the officer who took the call noted that Sam was acting strangely. Despite the fact that he was screaming and wailing, the specialist thought that it was a feigned panic, because Samuel was calm enough to answer questions, and his voice was not shaking. When he was asked to start resuscitative measures, he first doubted the need to do so, then quieted down, and then, and after all, reported about a knife sticking out of his girlfriend's chest, which earlier he allegedly did not notice. It is noteworthy that before calling the police, the guy called his parents and his lawyer uncle, who arrived at the apartment before the police. To the station to testify, as already mentioned, Sam also went together with his uncle. In addition, the next day Sam went back to the sealed apartment with the same uncle to get some personal belongings and took out all of Ellen's gadgets. They took 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet of the deceased. When the investigation suddenly decided to check these devices a few days later, it turned out that the search queries included topics related to voluntary demise. The police officers who arrived at the scene made only a cursory examination of the scene and concluded that Ellen had taken her own life. Subsequently, despite the emergence of new details, they refused to change their verdict. The order of the wounds could not be established, but it is certain that the final blow was a blow to the heart. The medical examiner who conducted the autopsy found all this very strange, and he decided to conduct his own additional investigation, sending a sample of the spine of the deceased to a highly specialized specialist who could give a conclusion regarding the integrity of the spinal cord. If the spinal cord was damaged, then Ellen would be paralyzed and unable to stab herself in the heart. But soon the expert miraculously changed his mind and abandoned his investigation, stating that according to his report, the spinal cord had not been damaged. However, the conclusion itself was never attached to the case materials. It also didn't bother anyone that with such numerous and extensive wounds on Ellen's body, there was very little blood around, which could indicate that someone had wiped it off, but no one even bothered to look for possible washed-away marks. The luminol used in such cases was simply ignored. The trash cans in the apartment were also not examined, and if there was any evidence in them, they were lost forever. The unhappy parents were informed of the death of their only daughter by the Goldberg family, for they were the first on the scene. Ellen's family lived in another town, a couple hundred miles away from their daughter, but they arrived as quickly as they could. Santa and George couldn't believe what was happening, and flatly denied that Ellen could have taken her own life. But the grief-stricken parents were never given a clear answer to the question of what happened that night with their daughter, only a dry conclusion and refusal to initiate criminal proceedings. Then the Greenbergs decided to conduct their own investigation with the involvement of independent specialists. Soon they were contacted by a private detective who offered his help completely free of charge because he himself wanted to understand this confusing case. The detective studied the materials and came to the conclusion that Ellen's body was moved after her death. This was evidenced by a dried blood trickle from her nose toward her ear. But Ellen was found in a sitting position, so the blood couldn't have traveled that way. He also found smeared stains on the floor, very similar to drag marks. In addition, after a second one, the guard remembered that Sam, who had asked for help, was wearing a tracksuit and said he had come back from the gym, but he was wearing boots. He did not have a bag with a change of shoes with him. But despite the new evidence and witness testimony, the parents of the deceased were again denied a criminal case or further investigation. The Greenbergs were even denied case files, including a recording of Sam's phone call to the police, as well as surveillance footage showing the time he walked toward the gym and then returned from there. 4 years later, a new young officer has joined the county's homicide unit, taking a position as an assistant prosecutor. He had heard about the unsolved, strange case while he was still studying at the university, and now he decided to get materials from the archives and get to the truth. His attention was drawn to the injury to the back of the head, which could be the first to indicate that Ellen had been attacked from behind when she hadn't expected it. Also of interest to him was the note that there was no spinal cord injury, but there was no official document to prove it. All of the ADA's attempts to find any report regarding the spinal injuries were unsuccessful. It was allegedly lost somewhere in the archives. Then he made an official request to the Center of Forensic Medical Examination to get a duplicate of the document. And then it turned out that no one had ever given such a conclusion, and the body was not examined for spinal cord injuries. At the same time, a fragment of the spine had somehow miraculously been preserved and could be re-examined. An independent specialist was brought in and determined that the spinal cord had been damaged in several places at once, so that Ellen could not have inflicted further injuries on herself. The resulting materials were passed to the police, but there, after reviewing them, again refused to initiate criminal proceedings. In 2018, the coroner gave an official conclusion, which stated that all 20 wounds the deceased had inflicted on herself, and there can be no doubt about it. New investigation. Once again, amid a stalemate of justice, the grief-stricken parents hired a new attorney with whom they recollected all the documents, previously unrecorded evidence, facts, and witness statements. In 2019, they filed a new lawsuit against the coroner and experts who had improperly done their jobs and effectively collapsed the case. The following spring, the lawsuit was heard and settled, but trials never began due to the pandemic raging around the world. It was expected that the case would be reclassified, but due to the negligence of the police and medical examiners, as well as the resulting confusion, crucial evidence was lost and irretrievably lost. The parents of the dead girl even created a page in the social network dedicated to the progress of the investigation, where they share official materials, new details, and versions. Family, friends, and colleagues of Ellen insist that she could not take her own life, and even do it in such a heinous way. Ellen, in principle, did not tolerate the sight of blood. It made her sick, and she also had a low pain threshold, because of which she has never done tattoos or piercings. In the summer of 2022, the case was dismissed again, but the Greenbergs got it transferred to the district attorney's office, where a new prosecutor took over. The investigation began again, 11 years after those terrible events. But to this day, the investigation has never been finalized. How did Sam's fate turn out? For the first year after the tragedy, Samuel tried to keep in touch with his estranged father-in-law and mother-in-law. However, he did not take any part in the investigations initiated by them. He flatly refused to communicate with the police, and it seemed that he was not interested in the case. He himself adhered to the official version that his fiancée himself inflicted fatal injuries. Goldberg soon found solace with another girl, and just a year later married her. Together with his wife, he moved to another state and stopped contact with the Greenberg family. Now he and his wife are raising 2 children together, and about the dead ex-fiancée, Sam tries not to remember. What do you guys think? Is Sam responsible for Ellen's death?